Well, that's a good spot to let you know that we're live.
All right, awesome, cool, awesome. Oh, and I'm gonna link it to her later too, so that'll.
Oh,
no.
Oh my
happened?
God.
The hacker
Highly professional around here.
Right.
the hacker was on the inside all along.
The hacks were coming from inside the house.
Hmm?
Get out of there!
Okay. Is this the false start or the real
No, it's really going this time.
No. The first one was the false start. This is now the real false start. So,
start? Okay. Hello, this is Ethan from the Cringeworthy Geeks. Okay, I'll
Living up to the
restart. You're
name.
laughing at me. What?
Living up to the name.
Okay, shut up. I don't want to start now. You've ruined it.
Welcome, Freaks and Geeks, back to another thing on the thing.
The Cringeworthy Geeks. This is episode 2. We are here with the owner of Red Wagon Comics. If you want to introduce yourself, you're welcome
Hi.
to right now.
hi, my name is Jeffrey Leiker. Leiker, Leiker. It's a German name. It's not Leaker. It's not Laker. It's not any of these other weird pronunciations. It's Leiker.
Yeah.
Just want to, yeah, and we will have a good time. That's getting Swedish. That's no.
Close enough.
Actually, I got curious one time, and I Googled what Leiker stood for, and the only thing that I could come up with was that it's apparently a Welsh word for toy maker or something like that. So we might not even be German. I don't know. So my whole life is a lie.
Well, there's people sneaking out of the country, people sneaking in.
That's
Never
true.
know.
Well, technically around here we're Volga Germans, so we were already kicked out of one country and then went to try to go to Russia, which then we were kicked out of that country as well. So then we ended up here. So it's after many long lineage and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to refrain from the actually, because then I sound like a comic shop owner.
Worst interview ever.
Everyone knows that I had several of those moments even before I owned a comic book shop. I remember being at IHOP with a group of friends or something like that, and I had like my wallet was out. I was paying for my food or something like that, and my wallet at the time had was able to like something that I would do is I would just kind of shape it into the Imperial shuttle from Star Wars and everything, and I just fly it around and everything. And I might have been drinking at this point, but I remember like after paying, and I was just kind of like flying my wallet around at the table, just bored out of my mind while everybody else is talking. And then I was like flying it towards this girl that I was crushing on, because that's what you do when you're a geek and can't
That always
articulate your feelings to the women folk and everything. And she just goes, "No, don't shoot me!" And I just immediately blurted out, "It's just an ion cannon. It's not."
Oh my God.
Tell me you got laid that night.
No.
That's never how that works.
Sad
Oh
story.
man. Oh geez, I remember another friend, like I remember overhearing him. He was one of those guys that that had to be right about things even if he made stuff up. And I remember him saying, to someone, "Oh, they're called TIE fighters because they're shaped like bow ties." And I'm like, it stands for twin ion engine. Thank you very much. And
All right, we have determined your nerd credibility to be adequate.
well,
Hey.
that's how interviews work, right? I'm supposed to give you my resume beforehand and all that jazz. So yeah, so I own a comic shop, and I actually know things. Well, I try to know things anyway, and then I just fake it if I don't. So plus there's this wonderful tool called Wikipedia that just allows me to, because Lord knows, like, I haven't read a comic book since I opened this shop. And a lot of people will talk to me, like they'll come in and they'll just be like, "Man, it must be so nice to just be able to be in here and read comic books all day." And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever you say. mostly my day is spent, doing invoices and taxes and all this other like fundamental paperwork stuff, and then maybe I get a chance to thumb through a comic book, but
Huh. That's sort of disappointing, actually.
I know, right?
Was that what you expected when you first started?
Maybe.
Put the expectations low.
I know, right? It just honestly, what I mostly opened up a comic book shop to do was to just be able to like converse with people about comic books, because my normal day job is a blue collar job, and I mean, like, these are hardworking people. They're the people of the earth and everything like that. They're meant to be commended and everything like that. But I just get so gosh darn tired of talking about cars all the time. It just I didn't catch the Kansas City Chiefs game. I didn't, I don't care how the Royals are doing. All right. Can we talk about something else, please? It just so that I think that's mostly why I opened a comic book shop, is just so I can maybe attract other people that I can converse with about, things that I like to talk about, because I like taking control of a conversation. That is, I'm a very egotistical and narcissistic, eccentric person that likes to talk about himself. I mean, is that too much to ask? Really?
So what was it like trying to start a comic book shop in pretty much the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, that ended up exploding in my face a little bit faster than I expected it to. The thing of it is that, I mean, I opened the shop just simply because there's a void here in this particular area, and I needed to get comics myself, so I figured, why not get comics from, for everybody else and everything. And there were a lot of factors that I didn't quite factor into. Like, you don't think about light bulbs until you need to replace them, and you certainly don't think about them until you have to spend, $50 on a bundle of them just so you can, make your outside appear like it's inhabited and everything. There's just a lot of factors that just kind of went into it and everything. And I mean, I definitely didn't do it for the money. That is for sure. We're maybe like, I haven't paid myself yet. That's the one thing that I'm looking forward to, is when I can actually pay myself for doing this. And it takes up a lot of time. And I remember back when I first had this idea, I read an article written by the guy who owns Mile High Comics in Denver, Colorado. I'm blanking on his name right now. It's like Chuck or Charles. It starts with a C, if I remember right. And I can hear the people furiously typing in emails and comments going, "It's this name, you jerk," and everything. But
Don't worry, there's only a few viewers.
It's like, I apologize. I'm just horrible with names. Steve and Rachel. I don't know. I'm talking to you guys. So, no.
We know what you're talking about, the place.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember reading like articles written by him, because I mean, like, it's obvious he did something right.
Chuck Rosansky.
That's it. It is Chuck. So take that. Anyway. So, but I remember reading an article on him, and he had like this whole, like, I think it was like a 5-part series titled "So You Want to Start a Comic Book Shop" or something along those lines. And the very first bit of advice that he gave you was, don't open a comic book shop. And now I understand what he meant by that, because that is, it's not really very profitable or anything. And part of that kind of stems from, online media. You have Comixology, where people can just get their issues just delivered right to them on their tablet or mobile device or anything like that. And also, I mean, comic books are expensive. Like, it's insane how expensive they are. When I was reading comic books, they were about $1.15 or so, give or take, and even then, that was still, I think I had to like mow a couple of lawns in order to get my comic books fulfilled when I was a kid. But now, they're $3, $4. The annuals are like $7 if I remember right. It's insane the amount of money that is going into comic books. And then you also have the especially if you're like a DC or Marvel fan, because now everything is just kind of a big extravagant world-ending event that they have to kind of shake up every year. Just to get people to buy things. And then you have all these spin-offs that tie into it. And so if you want the complete story, you have to subscribe to like 5 different comic book titles in order to get like kind of the full thing. Like currently right now, there are 3 X-Men that are going on right now. So if you're an X-Men fan, you're ending up buying 3 comic books, and then they're going to release a 4th one in, I think, February, if I remember right. So there's X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold, Astonishing X-Men, and then X-Men Red, which is coming out. And
wow.
It's like they know how to hook you, Whereas, back when I was reading, there was one X-Men, there was one, Captain America. Now you have Captain America with Steve Rogers, and then you also have Falcon as Captain America too. And,
Spider-Man isn't Peter Parker. When did that happen?
No, he is Peter Parker still, because because of the whole Spider-Verse thing. Like there's like Miles Morales, Peter Parker, Spider-Gwen, and Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, are now in the same universe. So, so there are technically 4 Spider-Man titles if you wanted to, and then there's also like a collaboration title called Spider-Men, where it's Peter Parker and Miles Morales joined up together. And it's just an oversaturation. And I mean, I love superhero comic books. I still love them and everything. But as a buyer, I am just more drawn to the independent comic books. The Dark Horse, the Image, the ones where I don't need to consult a Wikipedia page in order to know what the hell is going on. And do what?
I was going to say, do you think that has to do with, most things like books or anything they've started to go digital? Do you think that has to do with the prices increasing?
No, it's not so much that. The big thing is that like the production values are definitely up. If you look at like the artwork that's in a comic book now compared to, back in the early days and whatnot, there's a lot more detail on the page, and consequently a lot more time goes into producing it. There are a lot more people involved in writing a single issue of comic books. Like back in the day, you would just see, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's name on the comic book.
Yeah.
Now you have like 5 different names on one comic book. For the most part, I mean, there's a few of them that still do like collaborating writer and artist, and then like a writer, artist, and inker or whatever. But for the most part, for the big stuff, I mean, I'm usually seeing about 5 different names on one comic book. So that's people that you have to pay, and then there's also like the whole marketing thing that goes into selling comic books as well. Because about the only thing there really is no advertising for comic books. The way that you advertise for comic books is in other comic books, or if or your shop, that you buy from, does promotions and things like that too. So that's mainly the big thing with the comic books right now. And usually what I recommend to people whenever they buy and they're on a budget, I honestly point them to the collected trades at this point, because
the omnibuses.
The omnibuses are one thing, but the other thing too is that excuse me, the comic books, the storylines will get collected and put into volume sets as well, based on like their storylines and everything. So like Miss Marvel Volume 1 has collected volumes 1 through 6 of the individual comic books, and then volume 2 has like 7 through 13 or 14, something along those lines, and then so on and so forth there. So if you're buying on a budget, for the price that you buy one of these collected trades, you would be getting only maybe 5 of the 6 issues if you bought just the individual comic books. Now, you don't get the story right as it comes out, and you have to wait for that trade volume to release. But in the long run, you're basically getting like an issue 2 free when you're buying the collected volume, and you don't have to worry about losing your pieces or anything along those lines. You can just set it on your bookshelf and it's just right there. So usually when people are buying on a budget, that's usually what I point them to, is to the collected trades. And the other thing too is there seems to be this idea that we need to start at the beginning. Usually when people come in here, they're looking for issue 1 of whatever it is going on right now. Well, issue 1 came out, half a year ago, and it's no longer in print. So the only way to get that is to get lucky at a comic shop that happens to have an extensive backlog, or you just buy the trades and then pick up on your single issues wherever a good starting point is. And so a lot of comic books are now, or not now, they were doing this back in the 80s and 90s too, but they would do story arcs kind of thing. So it would say like issue 19 of All New Wolverine would be like part 1 of this particular story arc, and then like that story arc would go from like 19 to 23 or something like that, and then they would start up another, or they'd do like a little one shot for issue 24 and then start a new story arc on 25, just as an example kind of thing.
Although for those ones, didn't they used to have those in like parentheses, they would have refer to issue blank blank blank, so you get this reference. Nowadays I think they expect you to know everything right away.
Well, or that they assume that you're just going to wiki it.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, in this day and age now, you can just Wikipedia anything and kind of get. But that's the other thing, though, too. Going back to digital media, is that you can get issue 1 on digital media, kind of. But the thing to me, though, it just doesn't feel right.
Takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, that's just me as an old collector, though, too. So I mean, it just doesn't feel right. And the thing is, though, too, is that even on Comixology, you're still paying full price for that comic book. So unless they have like sales or something along those lines where you can get them a little bit cheaper there. But I mean, if you're paying the extra $4, you might as well get the physical copy. But at the same time, that also might be hard to find. And then also most comic books come with a digital version of it too. So I mean, you are getting a digital version of it, and you could just put the comic book in your bag and board and never touch it at all, and if you wanted to, but but really, in all honesty, I think what is ultimately happening is that we're kind of having an oversaturation with things. Like, I mean, for example, right now, Superman, for example, there's Superman, then there's Superwoman, then there's Supergirl, then there's the Super Sons, and then there's a new Superman where it's like if he was Chinese or something along those lines. And I can't remember off the top of my head because I'm more of a Marvel fan than I am a DC guy. But
Red Sun, where he grew up in Soviet Russia instead of
that's it. Yeah, something like that. So
yeah.
I kind of feel like there's just an oversaturation of it, because most of my customers, when they come in there, they're like, wait, the Hulk is Korean now? It's like, and I'm like, well, that's one of them, and then
how about Iron Man?
Yeah, Bruce Banner. Oh yeah, Iron Man.
Riri Williams. How about that?
Yeah. There's so there's the female Iron Man, Ironheart, and then Doctor Doom is wandering around as the Iron Man now too, under infamous Iron Man.
Actually,
So-
this. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say this brings me to another point I wanted to bring up. When I'm sure you have, well, you're talking about. People are coming into your store, want to know where to start because there's so much to go over. There's about 50 years of comics. But do you want people to start from this is what I've been having troubles with. Do you start with one character and just read its entire history, or do you go by the eras, the reboots?
Well, the reboots are a good place to start. Like if you happen to walk into a comic shop in the middle of a reboot, yeah, that's definitely a good place to start. For me, I usually recommend just going in with a character, because most there's going to be a crossover with every character under the sun with all of these characters, and so if you come across a character that you're a little bit more interested in, then you go off of that. When I was reading comic books, again, because I was doing as a kid, I only had a finite amount of money to get comic books. The two that I was getting were X-Men and Spider-Man, because those were the characters that I enjoyed. And so those would be the only ones that I would buy or that I could afford to buy. So, but every once in a while, Cap would show up, Iron Man would show up. They're going to cross over eventually, or even the big event team ups and things like that. Stan Lee has said that every comic book is someone's first comic book. There really is no bad place to start. We just kind of have this feeling that we need to start at the beginning or else we'll miss stuff. When in reality, you could just kind of pick up anywhere and just start collecting from that. Are you guys Office fans at all, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the British one or the American one?
Either or.
Okay.
Either or. So, but we'll use the American Office as an example. If you try to watch the American Office from the very first season, it is a chore. But if you watch it, I think it's halfway through the second season or something along those lines, then it starts to hit its stride. Every single TV show that I've enjoyed, I've just kind of caught over at a friend's house, and they were usually mid-season or something along those lines. A good story will entice people to come to it regardless. You don't need to start at the beginning with things.
And especially with a lot of these comics have been going on for decades now.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's so much mythos to them that it sort of gets referenced all the time, but it really doesn't. It's an interesting style of storytelling that is both self-referential and yet not.
Yeah, and we'll use Superman as an example, and this is kind of a topic that I've been researching lately because I actually got invited to do a TED Talks in March.
Nice.
In Deerfield, Kansas, of all places. So, but it'll be broadcast on the TEDx YouTube page and everything along those lines. But the topic of that particular discussion is I think it's ideas and how they shape our how we create ideas that shape our future. Hold on, I have the letter right here. Let me pull it up. Creating a brighter future, the ideas that shape our lives is what the topic is. And so the idea that I've been working with is at least one example that I have is, are you guys familiar with the obviously you're familiar with Superman, but if you wanted to go back to the very first issue of Superman, it's not going to be Kal-El and he's not going to be from Krypton. Because the very first idea of Superman came from a story called Reign of the Superman, and it was about a guy who gained telekinetic powers, and he was bald. He was a human. He just gained these powers and everything. And there's a whole story arc. It's kind of like Flowers for Algernon. Or Algernon, or however you pronounce that that name. where basically, you know, after a while the telekinetics like wears off and he loses his powers and things like that. But it was written by the guys who, you know, went on to create the Superman that we know. But that's just kind of where that idea started. And then they went back and, you know, wrote in, you know, he's from another planet, he gets his powers from the sun. The original Superman couldn't fly, he could jump really far. That was where the phrase, you know, he can leap tall buildings in a single bound. He couldn't fly, he could just jump really high. And the thing is that actually is a kind of a blatant ripoff of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Princess of Mars, or John Carter of Mars saga. Which, if you guys have only seen the movie doesn't do the storybook justice. But in the books, you know, Civil War soldiers transported to Mars somehow, and because Mars's atmosphere is less than our Earth atmosphere, he is able to lift heavy objects and jump very, very far, and he becomes like this powerful warrior because his muscles are tuned to Earth's gravity rather than Mars's gravity. And that's kind of the same idea that the original Superman had, was that he's super strong because Earth is a bit different than Krypton. And then they also wrote in that he gets his powers from the red sun and
radiation
and radiation and this and that and everything. And then it just changes from there, you know, over and over and over again. Then he can fly. Then he has, like, I don't think he's used the frost breath in forever, but I could also be wrong too. So I mean, it's one of those things where you know, comic books are just changing so much that, you know, about the only fixed point in comic books is that Captain America gets frozen in World War II, and that's about it. Everything else is just kind of on a sliding scale of, you know, this happens here and this happens here. But the other thing too is that I don't know how many times that you know, Uncle Ben can get, you know, shot and killed by those robbers, or
he has a lot of bullet wounds.
I know, right? You think he could walk it off at this point or something, but you know, but I mean, everybody knows, or for the most part, everybody knows, you know, Spider-Man's origin story. He's bitten by a radioactive spider. You know, he decides to use his power to make money, but then, you know, Uncle Ben gets shot, and then that's where the whole great power comes with great responsibility thing comes from. And then, you know, then he decides to use his powers for good and everything along those lines. That has been done over and over and over and over again since the incarnation of the original character. And so I don't know why they would need to start at issue 1 of a reboot series when it's just going to be the same thing over and over again. Although now currently they've kept the canon that Peter Parker was killed by Doc Ock, and then Doc Ock, you know, took over Peter Parker's body, and then somehow his memories came back, and so it's now Peter Parker, but it's Peter Parker after Dr. Octopus, you know, ran around as Spider-Man for a while though too. So, you know,
comics.
I was slightly interested in picking up that issue. Sounded interesting.
It actually is a pretty solid story arc. I'm not gonna lie. For what it was, like it had like the potential to be just a really, you know, big eye roller, you know, kitsch kind of thing like that. But honestly, it was pretty well written, and I'm glad that I went back and read it when I did, because for a while there I actually got out of comics because of money and also the oversaturation of the market and everything. So, and I remember listening to you guys like sent me your YouTube link before doing this podcast, and I kind of listened around a little bit on that. And you guys actually talked about the comic book collapse in the '90s.
Oh yeah.
Too, with Todd McFarlane and Image Comics and the variant covers and everything like that.
I got a stack of those over in the corner.
So true. I have had we opened our doors in July, and it's now December, and in that time period I have had, I think, 5 or 6 Death of Superman come through the shop. And the thing is that like I'd maybe only sell it for like, depending on the variant cover, I maybe sell it for like $5 to $8 because it just it just isn't worth it.
You
because
take them
everybody.
Oh, sorry.
What? Yeah,
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
do you take them just to be nice? Just give them a little pat on the back?
Well, well, I don't take them. I mean, I buy it off of them, but usually the look of disappointment when it's like I can only give you like $2 for this, and I'm probably gonna turn around and make a $3 profit off of it the most. It because that's just kind of how it is. They're not collectibles. I could get on eBay and buy 4 of them for $15. It just because those have been so collected or so heavily collected because of the speculator bubble. You had people going into comic book shops who, after all of the stories of people selling their old comic book collections, selling for thousands of dollars, they went in to invest by grabbing up every single first issue that they could find, and then the comic book industry had caught on to this. So then they started pandering to that demographic because they were the ones that were buying the comic books. So that was where the variant covers came about, and all of these shocking storylines of Hal Jordan going crazy and killing all of the Green Lanterns and becoming Parallax and everything, and then or the death of Superman, or I'm blanking on other.
The other Robin, Todd. Who was the other Robin? The one who got killed. They had that call-in sweepstakes for it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Jacob Todd or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so the. They had all of that happen. And like I said, I mean, those were the example. All of my examples were DC, but I'm again not much of a DC follower compared to Marvel and everything. But I mean, like there were like I want to say there's like 5 or 6 Robins at this point, if I remember right.
Oh, at least.
I don't remember. Yeah, and then like one of them becomes the Red Hood, the other one becomes Nightwing, and everything, and. So yeah, which to me, Nightwing is more compelling than Batman, but that's just a personal taste. But and now I'm hearing the angry emails. So anyway, but to kind of get off tangent a little bit, that's kind of what happened. And then when all these people like suddenly wanted to turn around and collect on their investment, well, everybody was buying 5 or 6 copies of these first issues. And so they just had no value. The reason why the original copies from the old comics is because they were rare. If I remember right, the Action Comics that debuted Superman that we know, there's only like 50 of them accounted for at this point.
Well, the reason for that was during World War II they had
paper shortage. Yeah.
Well, drives for old paper.
Exactly.
To break them down for the war effort because supplies were so badly needed at the time.
It's blaming on World War II.
That Hitler just ruins everything, right?
Nah, geez darn Hitler.
I know, right? So something should be done about him. I swear. Just ruin it for the rest of us. But yeah, and like I have, so I have people that will come into the shop and they'll think they'll have something great, and they don't. Most of what I see come into the shop are like 90s comics, and there's maybe a few issues that are actually worth my time. The death of Superman I know is because there are people that will come into the shop and just go, "Oh my God, he has the death of Superman," and they didn't realize that I had like 5 of them, just last week or something like that, and so they'll buy that, and but yeah, the 90s comics, just there isn't a whole lot. I think the most expensive 90s comic that I've had come through the shop was I had the 2 issues where the Silver Surfer and the Carnage symbiote merged together to become the Cosmic Carnage. And it was like a 2-issue arc or something like that, and I believe I sold them for about $10 each or something along those lines, and that's like the most I've made off of a 90s comic. So,
You think it was worth so much because it was such a short series?
I really don't know. I think it was just because it hasn't been done again up until like the Venomverse, when the symbiotes basically invade. This is a recent one where the the symbiotes basically invaded and took over a bunch of characters from the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think that was like the only time that it did it. It also might have been the artist that was drawing it at the time too. Might have been kind of well known. I really don't remember. Like, I'm not really showing my encyclopedic knowledge very well, but I've been crutching on Wikipedia for way too long that I just don't have the brain stamina to to just keep track of all this stuff anymore, and especially for how convoluted everything has gotten too. So
understandable. But I think I started to find out that for some of the older issues and even some of the newer comics, like you're talking about advertising earlier. I think one of the biggest advertisers is actually the movies nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Because every time you can have an old issue that's worth like 5 cents because it hasn't been looked at for 10 years.
Yeah.
But now it can be worth like $50 if it's like, depending on certain things.
But it also is kind of a two-way street though too, because when I was doing my initial inventory for the shop there, it was before Iron Fist and the Defenders had come out, and so I invested a lot into Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and like Daredevil and everything like that. I bought like I think like 20 issues each of those first issues from when we were going to be open, and nobody bought them.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like, and that was what I was banking on too, was that I'm like, oh, these are popular TV shows, maybe someone wants to pick up the comic books, and nobody, and especially after Iron Fist launched, and the huge disappointment that was, and everything, nobody had any interest in.
Were you just watching their reviews like, oh god?
and then glancing over at my stacks of Iron Fist, and well, for me though, Iron Fist was actually one of those characters that I was reading before the Netflix universe was even a thing, and so when I heard that Iron Fist was getting his own show, I was actually really excited about that, because the Danny Rand is actually a really compelling character, and they just ruined it. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that comic book guy. But you ruined my fan base, guys.
Yeah,
this is the worst terrible show ever.
Yeah, he's a bit of a I don't know how to say, like a simpleton in the new show. But he seems like he might be a good side character for the Defenders. The team up one.
And I don't know if it's the actor or anything along those lines, but he just embodied that. Like I love that actor on Game of Thrones and everything. Like, I don't think it's the fault of the actor or anything.
I think it's the writing.
Yeah, it was a very rushed series and everything. But excuse me, taking drinks here, so I'm blabbering on. I'm losing my spit. But where was I? Oh yeah. But that also kind of gives us an idea of how the Netflix, launch all of the episodes at once can actually fail, in a way. Because back in the day, most TV shows, if they started a story arc that wasn't working out and the fans weren't receptive to it, they would end it about mid-season and then just go on to a completely different one. It's like, this isn't working, so we're just going to end it right here and move on to this next idea, and so but with Netflix and having everything out there all at once, you film everything at once and you just push it out there and hope that it gets receptive. And I feel like Iron Fist would have gotten an overhaul mid-season if it was released on a conventional schedule where it's one episode every week or something like that. So, and that way they would have like time to film things and change things and whatnot. But instead, and the other thing too is that when Iron Fist released, they were in the middle of filming The Defenders, so we had to still follow this Hand story arc that just wasn't working with the fans or anything. So, but they had to finish it out because they were already pretty much mostly done filming The Defenders when the reviews were coming back with Iron Fist. So I think it might need to be adjusted or something along those lines. But it is nice though that I can binge watch everything all at once. But if it's something that isn't working, it becomes a chore at that point. So,
yeah, that was the one series that it was pretty hard to get through, but it got us the Punisher, so I think that was worth it.
Yeah, is it though?
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Here's the thing. I liked the Punisher, the first season that's come out so far. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. My complaint with it is that I have to remind myself that this is a comic book franchise, and part of what made Punisher compelling for me was the fact that this is a normal guy who is going up against like these people with superpowers and holding his own without like any advanced like technology or power suits or anything along those lines. It's just, a guy with his, survival training and
just a really hardcore vet.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas like the Punisher show, while it's really well done, and I did enjoy it, it again just didn't feel like a comic book thing. Like I think if it had like a different title, it probably would have still been about the same per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
I'll admit I haven't really gotten that deep into the Punisher comics.
Yeah,
but it does make me want to though after watching that.
Right. And that's the other thing too is that here's a question. What do you think is like the best-selling comic book that I have in my shop? Just a random little trivia thing. Are you guys are from around here, right? Like in this little like Midwest cloister kind of thing. Yeah. What do you think is the most asked for comic book in the shop right now?
I would guess Deadpool, but what do you think, Ryan?
I want to say Punisher because that's kind of in line with our political
our discussion. Yeah. And you would be kind of right on the Punisher. It's like the second most popular. The most popular one right now that I kept getting asked about all the time was Spawn, of all things. But that was the other thing though too, is that like I assumed that Deadpool was going to be, because that was another one that I invested heavily into, was Deadpool, and there was a brand new series called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe again.
They're redoing that one.
Yeah, they just finished it like a couple months back. It was only like a 5 or 6 issue run, if I remember right. But again, though, but that was one that I had issue 1s in when the store opened, and now I have like a bunch of issue 1s that I can't get rid of.
Hey, just kind of drop them out back. I'll be by later.
Right. Yeah, but. So it's kind of one of those things though too, and I like most and there are some really good Deadpool fans, and Deadpool was actually how I got my wife into reading superhero comic books. When we met, she was mostly reading manga and the Japanese stuff mostly is what she was reading, and then I introduced her to the Marvel universe, and I used it through Deadpool because he's a fun character to that's fairly accessible and everything.
And he interacts with the universe a lot more than other characters.
Exactly. He's going to cross over with everybody, so you're going to get a taste of the Marvel universe just going through him and everything too. But again, though, like that one just didn't sell well around here. I know a crapload of Deadpool fans, but none of them read comic books. They just really enjoy just really enjoy the character Deadpool and just kind of little snippets of it here and there and everything. And I'm not like sitting here, crying out, oh, you're a fake nerd and everything like that. I mean, it's just it's one of those things where, again, like the price of comic books and the accessibility of comic books are partially why people don't really quite get into them per se, when in reality all it does is just take that step and everything. But I definitely think the price of comic books, it doesn't help much, and especially around here where everything is just kind of most of our spending money is not really used in a lot of. There are other luxuries that you can buy over comic books around here, and so for a lot of people, they don't really quite see the point of paying $4 for something that only has 10 or 8 pages or so, and they're finished reading it in about 10-15 minutes or so, conservatively speaking.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And again, that's another reason why I usually offer the trades over anything else, because you get a little bit more. Yeah, they're like $15-20, but it takes a little bit more time to read through than the other ones.
Yeah, so. I feel like you're more likely to read those again too, because I don't know why. Maybe I'm just lazy, but it's easier to open a book and take the tape off your packing, slide it out, don't damage it.
Yeah, put on the gloves and everything, and try not to get your fingerprints.
You turn the page and you wash your hands.
Not too hard there.
Oh my.
Oh, but with bringing it back to the Deadpool, I started to notice like you were saying, there's a bunch of fans of them around here, but they don't like to buy the actual comic.
Right.
Where do you think that came from? Because I've noticed that started happening even before the movie was announced. So because usually a movie comes out and it gets a bunch of fans.
Right. That's a tough one to call though too, because I feel like I don't want to ever call anyone a fake fan or anything along those lines, because there are different degrees of fandom and everything. I love Lord of the Rings. I love those. I love reading the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit books. I've finished the Silmarillion once and I haven't read it again. And I haven't even really touched any of the things that Tolkien's son Christopher went on to write, the Children of Húrin and everything along those lines.
But I still appreciate.
Yeah. But my wife might have words with you. But I love those books. But I mostly read just those 4 books, and I enjoy the Lord of the Rings trilogies on the movie, not so much the Hobbit. But my wife, for example, she learned phrases in Elvish so she could write fan fiction for Lord of the Rings. So it's just we're 2 different levels of fandom, but we both appreciate the art probably just as much, kind of thing. So
I actually kind of have a theory on that.
Okay.
When I was a kid and going into my teenage years, the only place I was able to get comic books was at the Dillons, because I grew up in Hutchinson. Okay. And I was talking to one of the guys that delivers the periodicals to the store I was working at, and he said that they used to do a lot of comics, and now they just don't do any because nobody buys them from the stores anymore.
Yeah. And the other problem with that though too is that and I'll let you in on some insights of the retail part of comic books. Diamond, in order to have an account with them, Diamond is the distributor for comic books, and they're the only ones that can get you DC and Marvel in the US anyway. So if you want those, which you definitely want those because those are usually your big sellers, so if you want those, you have to go through them. Now Image, you can go directly from them. Valiant, you can. I think Dark Horse, you can you can do from other sources as well. I don't quite remember, but
Isn't
most
Dark Horse
of the time,
defunct?
no, it's still going around.
It is? Cool.
Oh yeah. Dark Horse is where Hellboy lives, and that's the one that I'm keeping up with. So
I think they just did they just sell some properties or something.
Well, they quit making Star Wars.
Yeah,
that's what it is. They with the acquisition of Marvel and Disney and everything like that, every Star Wars now falls under Marvel. Which Marvel did some Star Wars like way back in the day too. I think there were like 3 different printing companies that did Star Wars.
And their storylines were weird.
Well, that wasn't that before the movies came out? It was like an advertisement, pretty much.
Before the prequel movies?
Marvel #1 was, but
no, before the very original Star Wars movies.
I think you might be right on that one. I wouldn't quote you on that, but I don't.
Because that's why the plots are so weird, because there wasn't actually a script for the original movies.
Well, and then they finished up with the first movie, and then they didn't know what was going to happen in the next one. The next movie.
The first movie was just kind of meant to be a standalone movie. You know, when you watch it from beginning to end, if somebody told you that it wasn't like chapter 4 of a series or chapter 1 at that point either, you would have watched it as just like a standalone movie, and it works great as a standalone movie. So I think that might have been it. That might have been like their expanded universe after the New Hope. But again, though, I'd need to wiki it. So, where were we? Oh yeah. But in order to maintain a contract with Diamond, you have to buy, I think, $500 worth of product from them every month in order to keep an account with them.
Oh, jeez. Would that even fit in your store after a while?
We were running out of space like the third week. Well, we only have like 550 square feet in the shop too, so that's the other thing. But that's also part of it though too. That's part of your contract with Diamond is you have to buy that much worth of product every month in order to keep your account with them, and you want to keep your account with them because you want to get the new issues as they come out, because that's where you make your money and everything. So that's the other issue that we have, or that's the reason why the Dillons probably isn't carrying them anymore. When I first bought my first batch of comics, I bought from Alco on a spinner rack, and it was like a grab bag bundle. There was like 12 of them for like $5 or something along those lines, and it was just a random assortment of comic books. But that was like my first thing was that was kind of how I started on comic books. One of them being an issue of Jeff Smith's Bone series, which is my absolute all-time favorite comic book story ever. And I have I'm on like my 3rd or 4th single volume collection of that, because they just wear out from me reading it over and over again. So but yeah, that's basically why a lot of shops now just don't carry comic books anymore, and that's why it's like a specialty store that you have to go to. And part of the appeal that I was trying to go for with my shop was to be welcoming to new readers, because going back to The Simpsons, is that stigma of comic book shop owners looking down at disdain over their glasses at you, the uncultured plebs of geekdom that you dare to come in and ask who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. you only even know that name because of the trailer for the movie, kind of thing.
It's like reverse elitism.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of I can assume that you guys have been bullied as well growing up in rural Kansas as geeks and everything too, and I know I was. I had asthma. I didn't play sports. I was in theater and everything like that, and it just it just kind of you kind of almost like turn it back around on people, and I at least can pride myself on that at least I don't think I've done that at all. And that's again why I say, I don't want to look down on people who just buy the Deadpool emblem hats and really know nothing else about the character other than, the video games or something along those lines. Because, they're getting enjoyment out of it, and that's what ultimately should happen, is that I sell enjoyment.
Well, let's not be silly here. If you're a know-it-all asshole to everybody that comes through the door, they're not going to spend any money with you.
It's true. It's very true. But there are certain people that they're like collectors that kind of look for that though too, because they want to know that the stuff and everything. And I mean, well, I grew up an only child, so like I kind of grew up with. I had a nerdy uncle who would, who introduced me to like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And so like I kind of floor these older guys that come into the shop, and I'm able to talk to them about like, John Carter of Mars and the Heavy Metal magazine and things like that, because that's just what I kind of gravitated towards, because my mom and my uncle kind of introduced me to this whole like sci-fi and early stuff, because that's what they grew up with. So, but I also like educating people about it. I don't want to look down on anyone and just be like, I'm not going to sell you this comic book unless you can tell me who this particular character is, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, but like you're saying, I think you're probably one of the more calmer, like, well, just shop owners in general, because even more so than like the general stores you can just walk into and you better know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I remember in Topeka when I was living there for a couple years. I finally decided that I was going to get into DC a little bit more, and one character that I actually was kind of fascinated by was Green Lantern. And I walked into the shop and I just literally asked the guy, I'm like, hey, listen, I kind of want to get started on Green Lantern. What can you recommend for me? And he kind of looked at me like I was nuts or something like that. Granted, this was like just after the movie came out, so he probably thought that was what I was going off of, but no, I was not going off of that thing. So it was just a like he ultimately ended up recommending to me, like, I think it was like Green Lantern Rebirth, which wasn't too bad, but it picked up right after Hal Jordan's return from being Parallax for a while. And so again, that was one thing that I had to like go back and Google what all that was about and everything, and that was just kind of how I got started on Green Lantern. I mean, I only have like my toe in the water and everything, but it still took some research even after that recommendation and everything like that. But it seemed like I inconvenienced him when I came in and asked about it. Like, it was so when I opened up the shop, that was what I tried to do. I tried to be as welcoming about it. Now I still get passionate about it, as if you guys couldn't tell for the last 50 minutes or so that we've been talking.
That's a good thing, though.
and everything, and I probably overwhelm people with the amount of information that I just blurt at them. Like, they don't even ask for it or something like that. They'll like just walk in. They'll just say something like kind of off kilter, like why is Iron Man a woman now? And it'll be like, oh, it's this whole thing where Tony Stark died and he had his consciousness uploaded as into Jarvis, and then after he died, he sent the schematics to an MIT girl and everything, and just I might be a little intense, but I'm at least welcoming, I'd like to feel. But But again, though, it's a small store, so I can hear every little thing too. And I've been working on that lately, where I'm like trying not to just immediately blurt out what what people are like talking to their friends about and everything. So, but that's just
that's probably helpful at times though, because if people are like me, sometimes it's a kind of a big challenge to ask people for help in that situation when you don't want to sound like the idiot that doesn't know anything about anything there.
Oh yeah. And like and for me, like there's no idea of a stupid question. I mean, like I said before, I work a blue collar job, and I'm not a blue collar guy. I really am not. It's something that helps pay the bills and everything along those lines. I don't know near enough what I should be doing in order to get paid to do what I do for a living. And it just boggles my mind that there are guys that are, whenever I ask a question, they'll say beforehand, they're like, feel free to ask whenever you want to, but then as soon as you do, you're like, really? You don't know this? And I'm like, it's never come up before. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Usually I don't think that there's a problem with anything until I discover that there is. So
yeah. Have you tried to seduce some of your other coworkers into the comic life?
Nope. I haven't called out where I work or anything along those lines, so I'll go ahead and go out and say this. I had a coworker that bragged about how he hasn't read a book since he was in high school.
Oh no.
and I'm like, and you're looking at me like I'm the idiot. Okay, sure.
And that's the gene pool's failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time though, like there's to a certain point I can understand a few things, like learning disabilities and stuff like that aside, because dyslexia is a thing and everything along those lines. However, I do have my best man, the best man in my wedding. He's dyslexic as well, and he has read all of the Lord of the Rings. He's read more of the Silmarillion than I have. He reads like the Halo books and things like that. If he finds something that he's passionate about, he will sit down and read a book. It takes him, like 3 or 4 months in order to get through one, but he'll put in the effort to do it. So, and I know a lot of people that are dyslexic that are just still heavy readers. So I don't really view that as like kind of an excuse. It's more of a crutch to just, not really get by it or anything like that. I mean, like.
Yeah, and plus, I don't think anyone that has that would brag about it really.
Right, exactly. And the other thing too is that I don't know if he's dyslexic or not, but just blurt out, bragging you haven't read a book since high school, kind of thing. I just feel sorry for you. It's like, and it doesn't even have to be like, fantasy or science fiction or anything like that. Like, read a true crime, read I don't know, Glenn Beck's book or something along those lines. I don't know, just read something. It is a fundamental, and the thing is that like when this guy like read aloud like instructions or something along those lines, like from an email or something along those lines, it showed that he hasn't read a book since high school. Like it was like listening to a like a first grader like sound out his words and things like that. And I don't mean to like come down on the guy or anything like that, but
you should probably just stop talking about it right now.
So I won't.
Nah, he had it coming.
He did. So he's no longer a coworker, so I can talk about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you won in the end.
We'll sure, we'll go with that.
Thunderdome, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's see how many other bridges I can burn on this podcast.
Oh, I know how.
What's your?
I don't quite consider my day completely fulfilled unless I've had my foot in my mouth at least once or twice. So
I think I found the solution to that. Let's get into the politics part.
Oh boy. Okay.
Well, I'm sure you've seen it, run the store, of course, that some comics have got more of a political slant than others. How do you feel about some of those?
Are you talking about like
Mockingbird.
the Marvel social justice warriors, as certain YouTubers are prone to call it?
Oh, yeah.
The ones that do it, I don't know how to say it, with not as a... They're not really pushing their...
Agenda?
Yeah.
I'd say they are sometimes.
Well, the ones that are doing that and the ones that are doing it more...
Subvertly.
Yeah, I guess that's a good word.
Okay. I do have a couple of stances on that. First of all, the current Miss Marvel, which is a Muslim teenager, is a fantastic read. It really is. It is one of the few Marvel titles that I'm actually keeping up with, because like it's really well written. It doesn't feel like it's heavy-handed or anything along those lines. This because if I remember right, the author that is writing it is herself Muslim, and Mark Twain has said on writing, write what you know, and so this is a and I believe it's a female that's actually writing for Miss Marvel as well too. So she's a female Muslim, and so this is what her experiences are and everything. And a lot of people are like, well, why couldn't they just make an original character or something along those lines? Because original characters, nobody buys them. I mean, I hate to say it, but nobody buys original characters for the most part. We're almost like completely established in who these characters are, that we don't want to risk. Like, did you know that there's a character in the Marvel Universe called America?
Oh my, that was the one I wanted to talk to you about.
Kind of thing. Now that one is an example of not really what to do per se.
Oh man, it's bad.
And it's not because of like the fact that she is who she is or anything along those lines. It just isn't a compelling story because we have nothing to really ground ourselves with the character per se. Versus again, like the Miss Marvel, I latched onto her immediately. I mean, I grew up in a German Roman Catholic community, so I am a white male that was raised Catholic. That I should not be able to relate to any of this. But it's the fact that this particular character basically is going through the same struggles that I was as a teenager. Maybe not directly like hers. It's more faith-based than me being, a nerd in a heavy football community kind of thing. But it's still something that can translate in that way. So I guess long and the short of it is that like I am okay with these characters like picking up these different mantles as long as they're done well. Because in the end, like, you can tell the difference between pandering versus a genuine, honest story. And so I don't want to do like a blanket sweep where it's like, oh no, this character is bad, so all of it is bad. You have to kind of do a little bit of digging per se. Yeah,
I would say where you can tell it gets into pandering is when, well, the whole goal to make, they're adding these types of characters to make it more so. So you don't have it's just white men for like half the characters, which is understandable because that's more than half of them.
Right.
But if you want to normalize the characters of like you're talking about the Muslim female, you want to make that seem normal. Don't push in your face. Make it seem this is a person, and they have real issues, not making up issues to.
Exactly. And so it's one of those. Like I think it's just how it's done more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm okay with a Korean Hulk. I really am. Because they wrote it in that he was like a protege of Banner and everything like that, if I remember right. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the She-Hulk. I remember there was a huge outcry when she first first appeared, because it was, she was just a female Hulk kind of thing. But really, in all honesty, her character is a lot more fleshed out, almost more than Banner's is. I mean, she's able to maintain her intelligence while in her Hulk form and everything too. So she's more well spoken and whatnot. So, I think it's just the method as how it's done. Like a good writer can make empathy wherever there is none, kind of thing. So,
well, and see, that's where I would say that it doesn't matter that you're a white male, that you don't have to be the exact demographic of these characters in these stories, because if it's a compelling story, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And I really feel that sometimes most of these people are just pushing out these checklists of minority groups and what's the word?
To fill a parameter, basically.
Like, these are the check marks that are going
to
be in
the
every...
put upon... Right. Oh, what am I thinking of?
I think I know what you're talking about. The one where, like you get funding if you have like a certain amount of students that are of this ethnicity or something along those lines. Is that what you're?
I don't think they're doing it for that reason, but
right.
Just all the. Oh, why can't I think of that word right now?
Culture climate? Or?
No, the groups that are being kept down.
Minorities?
The minority?
Well, yeah, but what's keeping them down? Oh.
I feel like we're playing trades.
Suppression?
Yeah, suppressed groups.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And that they just keep micromanaging all these groups and cutting them down and cutting them down and cutting them down, so now you have...
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rant over.
Yeah, no. I see where you're coming from. And for me, like, I am kind of in agreement with you in the sense that, like, if it feels like a checklist, it's not going to make a good story, kind of thing. The point that I want to reiterate is that they're not a good story because they are this demographic, or that this particular character is suddenly coming out of the closet, or anything along those lines. It's more the fact that it's shoehorned. Mm-hmm. Per se, is I think what, if I understand you correctly, is where you're getting at.
Well, like American Chavez, it's from the very first line in the introduction, where so no green card, that's so ham-fisted and so cringy that.
Yeah. So and again, though, like the thing of it is, though, too, is that it depends on, like, sales talk, over a long period. Like, Miss Marvel right now is doing fan-frickin-tastic because the writer has put in a good heart into that particular character. And now watch as, like, we go online and we find out that the same writer for Miss Marvel is the same as the one for America too, but I don't remember off the top of my head, and that just be my word. I don't know. But
I'm pretty sure. Well, because they really are going with the character is the same as the writer demographic, and let's see, Gabby Rivera writes America.
Okay.
And
I think everyone's kind of on agreement that series is kind of,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have people of, Hispanics coming into the shop and everything, and most of them are looking for, Venom and the other more established characters. They're not looking for the Hispanic characters or anything like that, and it's because the other more established characters are more compelling. It just kind of goes into that a little bit. So I mean, I'm trying to like pick words carefully and everything like that because it's
yeah, it's hard.
Hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a difficult topic to talk about and everything too, and it's a difficult topic to talk about without seeming like you're on this on this side of the fence or you're on that side of the fence kind of thing. And I'm a guy. I'll be honest. I voted Libertarian for this last election just simply because I didn't like either candidate.
Yeah,
kind of thing. And more than anything, and it's not because I liked the Libertarian Party either. Like, good Lord, he was nuts too. If you watch interviews with him, I didn't want him as president either. But the reason why I did that is because I'm in a red state. The state was going to go to the Republican vote regardless. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to at least have a third party reach that percentile where we could get a different voice in, because like to me, like I hate the two-party system. That's just that, and everyone's like, well, you got to adhere to it, or else if we break away from that, then the person that you don't want in is going to get in. And I'm like, I was getting neither person that I wanted in. And
I'm thinking that's
that leave me.
I'm thinking people are starting to kind of notice the two systems not working as well as it used to, because
well, voter turnout is like plummeting real quick over the last several decades. It has been just going downhill because of the fact that we feel like we don't have a voice anymore.
Yeah, we're disenfranchised, and especially because these two parties are. The rhetoric is completely different, but if you really get down to it, if you would have closed your eyes and changed the voice, Mitt Romney and Obama didn't sound any different when they were debating.
Yeah.
And it's been that way pretty much since Nixon.
Yeah. There's like a picture online. It's like it's titled like what voting for the lesser of two evils brings about, and what it is that it had like the left and the right, and then it had like the center. And then, like, gradually, like, the left moved more to the right, and the right, like, expanded their line a little bit more, kind of thing, too. So, I mean, a Democrat nowadays is, like, completely different than a Democrat in, the 30s or even further back and everything, too. So, I mean, ultimately speaking, we're not going to have really a say in anything until we get rid of the party system and the and lobbying. That is another huge thing that that we need to get rid of. But at the same time, running a campaign is expensive, and you need money to do it, and everything. So it's our hands are tied in a way. So
well, and that's what kind of appealed to me about Trump, was he wasn't beholden to any donors, and he wasn't. He's not a Republican. I mean, he just isn't. Because I'm a very conservative guy, and I do not like the Republican Party. They are, oh my, they don't know how to win, and even when they do, it's for the wrong reasons.
Right. Well, to me, and the thing is that like I'm not a Trump guy at all.
Fair enough.
Like I understand. Yeah. I was neither a Hillary guy either, though, too. But for me, like, and there is a difference between, like the people who voted for Trump because he was the Republican candidate and they just didn't want, Hillary in office. There's a difference between those, but they're still like calling him out on things that they're not agreeing with, versus the ones that are just blindly following him. That's the stuff that I can't get behind, because for me, like, our civic duty as Americans is to keep the people in power in check, not to just go, okay, go run this. We're going to go play Xbox for the next 4 years, and hopefully you don't screw it up, kind of thing like that. It requires active involvement. For me, the real reason why I didn't want Trump, and it's not because of, well, one, his mannerisms was a big thing, just because of I'm embarrassed by it, kind of thing. But it didn't bother me that he said the word pussy. It didn't, and things like that. felt like he just runs his mouth way too damn much. I don't see it as like, because I mean, like, I didn't particularly care for Obama either, on a lot of his policies, but at least he held himself to a certain level of dignity, kind of thing, in office.
Well, and I would argue that he did that to us, as far as we knew, but on the world stage, it was the opposite story.
Well, yeah, with like, I did not agree with like drone warfare or anything along.
Well,
those
not only
lines,
that, but just his very in-person diplomacy. He was weak, and he apologized for America, and he basically made it seem like he was so ashamed of our country that he wanted to give everybody else as big a slice as he could to make up for it.
So the opposite of Trump.
Yeah.
The anti-Trump.
But at the same time, though, like, I don't know, I'm a bit of a bleeding heart though too, and like, I mean, I was embarrassed by our country, like when Bush was in office, when Clinton was in office, when I don't think I barely remember like Bush Sr. in office hardly at all, but that's because that was getting down there in age and everything along those lines.
Well, and that's not to say that there's not things to be ashamed of. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we are still the world hegemon, and we need a leader that is not afraid to act like it.
Mm-hmm. I guess I have a different viewpoint because I just don't see it in Trump. I see him as a man-child, but that's just me. That's just how I see it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm of the belief that if like Obama was acting the way that he did, that Trump was acting, there'd be a lot more like racial slurs being thrown around and everything like that too. But I digress. Let's see here. What was I had another thought like that kind of coincided with all of this, because like a lot of people will tell me that, you know, like, oh, you're a liberal, and then like, you know, Democrats will tell me, oh, you're meat-headed conservative. I'm like, no, there's middle ground here, people, kind of thing. And to me, like, I didn't see in Trump. To me, Trump was just kind of using it as a way to set up after 4 years that he can make bank off of his companies when he got out of office. That's what I'm kind of seeing at this point. It wasn't so much that he was indebted to the companies; he was the company that's in charge now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I can't get behind, and we're kind of seeing that with like the whole FCC regulations and everything along those lines. Now, I will say this much, that he did impress me in like the first couple of months of office, where he was working on getting rid of what was it, the trade, there was like a trade agreement that basically allowed, you know, companies to move overseas and things like that, and not have to pay taxes. But we haven't heard anything else on that.
Oh, because it got ripped up the moment he took office. That was
yeah.
What? Oh, it was the East Asian equivalent of NAFTA. It was terrible.
Yeah, something like that.
It was 22,000 pages, and it gave foreign companies the rights to sue private American citizens. There was just so much bad in it. I can't think of what it was right now either.
Oh, yeah. But at the same time, though, like, honestly, the person that I was gunning for was Sanders in this election, and it's not because I'm a communist or anything along those lines. To me, like, I didn't agree with all of his policies or anything like that. I don't think that, you know, college should be free. I think it should be affordable. I think we need to be able to rein in, you know, the rising costs of this and the rising cost of healthcare and everything like that. I don't think that it should be free. I think it should be something that we can like just tone down a little bit and everything. But the reason why I was gunning for Sanders is because he felt genuine about it. And if you look at his, like, you know, previous records and everything, you know, that was mostly what he was voting for, even in like the early days of his careers in like the, you know, 70s and 80s and whatnot. So
yeah, he never really flip-flopped much, and like
exactly
Hillary, that was nearly the complete opposite not long ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So,
oh, sorry.
yeah. No, I was taking a drink. Sorry.
Oh. But with the lesser of two evils problem we've been having lately, I think with Trump, like him or hate him, I think there's a possibility we might have just fixed that problem. With the last election that came up, everyone started to notice that we don't have as much power as we've been being told we have.
Oh yeah.
And especially with the FCC thing that just popped up, I think that's even increasing the fire even more. So if things like this keep happening, I think there's going to be some sort of change. I can't say soon, but
yeah. So whether intentional or not, it's kind of thing. And the thing is though too is that it's un-American to wish him to fail.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want him to fail because when he fails, we fail. But I do think that we should be able to, outcry him,
criticize him
when. Yeah, exactly. We should be able to do that without being called a snowflake and you lost, get over it. And it's like, well, no, I didn't say that we lost. He is my president, but he also, like, if you look up the definition of what the president is, he is the highest civil servant. He still serves us, kind of thing.
Well, I'm on the Trump train, and he does stuff that just bewilders me all the time. So it's yeah. And
at least you can admit that. So that's the point that I'm getting. That's the point that I'm bringing up. So hey, isn't this a comic book show? Shouldn't we be talking?
So what'd you think of the Punisher Max imprint?
Punisher Max imprint. I don't think I caught that one. What was it like? The actor got featured in Maxim or something like that?
No, it was basically a run of the Punisher without any censorship or rated R.
Ah, okay, all right. Oh, are you referring to the one that was like way back in the 90s or early 2000s or something like that?
Yeah, it started in the early aughts.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. That one I didn't catch, and that's just simply because, again, during that time I only had enough money for like 2 or 3 different issues, and it was more of a matter of I had to stick with my guns at that point. I couldn't afford a Sega Genesis and an SNES, so I was a Nintendo kid. So it's I couldn't have both.
Is Max the same company that ran the first Jessica Jones series? Or I've never quite understood. There's the main Marvel, the Marvel brain, and they have a couple offshoot ones but they're connected. I've never got that though.
That might be a possibility. Again though, like I'm one of those posers. I didn't actually really know Jessica Jones, who she even was, until the Netflix movie.
Oh, I read it right before I watched it, so don't worry.
Yeah. So I mean. And it ended up being one of my. I actually kind of enjoyed that one more than Daredevil and whatnot. That was very compelling. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that at least, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's an offshoot on it as well here.
Well, it's an imprint of Marvel for R-rated content.
Gotcha. See, all of those are now combined now. There's Deadpool, Punisher, and Jessica Jones all come with a sticker that say warning, not for children, for adults only, kind of thing. I didn't think it was a separate printing though of that.
Well,
so
they probably saw they're popular now, so they wanted to bring them into the main titles.
Yeah, and that might have been it too. So and it's one of those things where it's you think you know the business, but then when you actually start doing it, it shows you how little you know and everything too. So
the only reason I blurted that out, the only reason I blurted that out is because that's probably one of the only Marvel series that I've actually read a majority of.
Right.
And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great.
Right. I gotcha. And I mean, and like I said though, for me, the Punisher, I found him a little bit boring unless he was actually going up against like these other, you know, super enhanced characters. But that's just, again, personal taste. You know, I know there's a lot of people that, you know, there's a majority of people that come in here, they're only interested in Spawn, Punisher, and Venom, like, and those are the only things that they want to buy. So, you know, which is, again, fine. It's money in my pocket. So
yeah, well, they're kind of like their own genre in the genre of Marvel.
Right.
Like, you don't want the happy-go-lucky, I don't know, early
Yeah.
Captain America, Iron Man, that stuff.
Yeah. It's the gritty stuff that, like, you know, the kids on the playground would sneak into school, kind of thing. And so they were like the cool kids, the edgy kids, and everything. But
Nah, that's when you get Johnny the homicidal maniac.
Yeah, I don't remember if he was actually in print when I was younger.
I think
Maybe
those
he
were
was.
just probably single issues then.
Yeah, that might have been it then. So, but I mean, like, that's not to say that I don't, you know, like stuff like that either. I mean, you know, Hellboy is pretty dark and grim too, and he's one of my favorite superheroes. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think some of those were like right off the heels of when, of course, I wasn't alive for very long when the '90s, they were trying to push the extremeness for their comics.
yeah, the edgy stuff, yeah, and that kind of came in with like Todd McFarlane and maybe even a little bit before that too, but like
Watchmen and
extreme and whatnot.
Oh, the Watchmen.
Watchmen came out mid '80s, I think.
Yeah, but they're a little. That wasn't really like edgy. That was just
it was. That was an edgy.
Well, it was kind of a parody though. It wasn't like we're gonna be
That
edgy
wasn't-
for the sake of edgy.
That wasn't how it was sold at the time, my friend.
Yeah.
That was cutting edge stuff. Nobody had ever written a graphic novel like that
Well,
before.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't like early 2000s, late 90s edgy like that.
Yeah. Well, the early 2000s, late 90s edgy was like safe edgy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know,
It wasn't merchandise or whatever.
Yeah, it was like you know, Spawn was still a character that, you know, 13-year-olds could still buy the comics for and everything.
Yeah.
You know, it was kid edgy is I think is the term for it, or kid friendly edgy or something along those lines.
Extreme with an X.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, but yeah. I've actually had
like-
deep. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but like Watchmen was specifically for adults, like when that was written, and then you also have like Frank Miller's Dark Knight as well. That was
Pretty dark.
It was pretty dark, but again, though, it was still fairly friendly. It was like PG-13, maybe rated R on the cusp of it or something like that. Because the thing is, though, is that mature comics at that point in time didn't really sell very well either, because comics were still a kid thing for the majority of the time. However, that was when the market kind of opened up for the edgy adults that grew up reading comic books at that particular or like in their youth, and then, you know, now they have disposable cash to to buy all of these comic books and everything too. So, but they still had to kind of keep it within like because if I remember right, the comics code was still a thing at that point in time too. So you had to kind of adhere to that.
Watch your P's and Q's there, boys.
The FCC won't let me be. That's not different.
Oh.
But actually, speaking of the Watchmen, well, not just them, but like this, the idea in general.
Right.
I've read some books where it's like they're written not quite as a series, but like this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the
For
end.
Watchmen?
Yeah, like the original Watchmen graphic novel.
Gotcha.
How do you feel about titles like that being used for continuations? Like when I first I read Watchmen not that long ago. Actually, I bought it from you, if you remember.
Oh, okay.
But like I had this debate with a friend. It was like, is it wrong to try to continue something that like Watchmen, it was almost like a parody of the comic market at the time, or the way they were making comics.
Right.
Is there like a wrongness to trying to sell something that was never meant to be sold?
Well, that's kind of a I don't want to say a loaded question or anything like that, but
yeah, sort of.
Yeah, but I think the way that I would describe it, like a lot of people, for example, like the Watchmen are now coming into the Marvel, or not in the Marvel, the DC universe. They're bringing them in with the Doomsday Clock storyline, which I don't. yeah, Dr. Manhattan is going to be a part of the actual DC canon.
I don't know how I feel about that.
So, I'm the exact same way, because what does that do with Superman? Because I think Dr. Manhattan could take Superman.
Well, that was the point of him existing. He was like almost a parody of Superman. Like, this is the most powerful man alive. What would happen if that was real?
Basically, so yeah.
And when you bring them into a world that already has superheroes, it's kind of like, well, what's the point here? If
only you could experience time like I do.
I want to say short answer is I'm tired of it. But the long answer is, though, I feel like, there are certain things that can be garnered from it. Like, have you guys read the Before Watchmen series?
I haven't yet. Is that written by the same creators, or is that a new team?
No. Alan Moore had nothing to do with any of it.
Okay.
So, and he outcried against it when it was coming out. But he outcries against everything, though.
Yeah, he's kind of a whiny baby.
I think he might have a good point in that reason,
though. He's an artist man, though. But yes and no. The thing is, though, is that, like, Before Watchmen, most of it was pretty terrible. However, the Rorschach arc of that is phenomenal. So I would gladly take that to get another Rorschach arc on it, because that was really well done. The guy, I don't remember the author that wrote that one, but he took the time to really study that character and really, kind of
get in his head and
feel in his head. And, exactly. It was very much a very loving, crafted story for it. Which, so, like I said, I mean, like, these are obvious cash grabs because it's a familiar title that, this and that. But at the same time, though, like the Lego Movie could have been a cash grab, and then it ended up being like this whole other thing that that ended up being, pretty incredible. So, yeah. I mean, I think if it's just done right, it could be it could be something,
I guess I was just wondering, like, is it quite worth it? But I guess there's no clear answer, yes or no. It's kind of a black and white issue, or not a black and white issue.
And it's also subjective, though, too. Like, I love Watchmen, but I've handed it to people that I would swear would love Watchmen, and they ended up hating it. So
it's not really a comic book, like, it's the anti-comic book, I would say.
Yeah, you almost have to be into comic books and in the
but at the same time, it's kind of like an FU if you enjoy those.
Yeah, it can be, yeah.
So and I just view it as, like, it's its own, like, just condensed universe, though, too. The other thing, though, too, is that I also have a huge, like, there's a huge hole in my heart that retro stuff just fills so nicely and so fluidly. And
it's nice, like, when you find something old that it has such quality that you don't realize how old it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It like, when you read Watchmen, it does definitely feel timeless still, even though it's obviously taking place in the 80s and everything. But
Nixon is present for life. And
yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things. I don't know. Like, and the thing is, though, too, is that Alan Moore is kooky, but I actually do like a lot of his writing. Like, I loved his writing on Swamp Thing. Like, and Swamp Thing is, if we're gonna say what my favorite DC character is, it would be Swamp Thing, just because, like, I kind of gravitated towards the monstrous type characters, especially in my later years. Like, my favorite X-Men was Nightcrawler, the ones that just couldn't blend in with society or anything along those lines. They had to live on the fringes because that was what I kind of related to in a way. So. But Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was really well done. Alan Moore also did the
didn't he do a Batman run?
He did do a Batman run. He did a but the one that I'm thinking of is he did a he did V for Vendetta, if I remember right.
Oh god, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also did the comic book version of I Am Legend as well. And it was pretty well done. Actually, I Am Legend is one of those series where I watched the movie first, kind of enjoyed it, wanted to check out the source material, and Hastings at the time had a copy of the graphic novel, and that was a little bit more accessible than the original story itself. So I read that, and as soon as I read that, it kind of ruined the movie for me, because when you read the actual source material, it's a lot different than the movie. The movie was just another zombie movie, but in the original material, the reason why he is legend is because he's the boogeyman for these vampire characters. So he went into their houses and killed them in their sleep, and so all the vampires were were telling stories about to their families about this one guy, this crazed guy that could come out during the daylight and find you while you're sleeping. And
it does sound interesting.
It was a
great twist.
It was a fantastic twist, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. So it's just kind of one of those things where kind of going back to your original question about that, the kind of standalone stuff. I mean, I feel like if something works as a standalone, it's depends on the mindset when you go in to do it, because going back to Star Wars, The New Hope was probably going to be just a standalone movie, and it works that way as is. But then we wouldn't get Empire if all we did was just bottle that one Star Wars movie.
That is a good point.
Never touch it again.
And you should see what it was before they edited it. That movie was saved by editing.
Yeah, I always get in fights in the Star Wars fan page when I call out George Lucas. Everyone's like, "No, he's a god. Shut up."
No. George, the prequels are what happens when a god is never told no. So that's and that's
in Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I think that was ultimately the problem with the prequel trilogy is that all of the people working on that project grew up as Star Wars fans, and so they were probably starstruck to be like, "Oh, we're working with George Lucas. He knows what he's doing. We have to follow his every idea and everything." When in reality, good art sometimes takes collaboration, not just one person's vision, because one person's vision could be a little skewed. Empire was directed by someone else. It wasn't directed by Lucas.
Ivan Kershner.
Yeah, and for me, Empire is kind of my more favorite of the original trilogy.
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of people.
Yeah, for a lot of people. There's some people that like Jedi more. There's some people that just stick with the original, Star Wars. But I really loved Empire. And the other thing too is that, kind of going off of Rogue One and Force Awakens and everything too. I have friends that are on both sides of the fence where they hate it, and then there are those that love it. And most of the complaints that I hear is, Force Awakens was just a direct retread of the original trilogy, and it's well, yeah, I mean, they had to do some callbacks to just kind of
It was a smart move for a franchise beginner.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't want to completely turn your fan base off, and instead just go, hey, listen, we know the series, we know this is our assurance that this is in good hands. I haven't seen Jedi yet, so I can't determine whether or not they've continued that or not. I think we're going to go try to see it on Sunday or something like that. But for Rogue One, I didn't think that the AT-ATs could ever be terrifying ever again. but then Rogue One like just kind of amped that up a little bit. And I'm kind of in the same boat where it's like, yeah, the little Easter eggs and the little nods kind of got old after a while. Like when you run into those two guys on that Luke meets in the cantina on
the Jedi planet.
Yeah. When you run into those, I'm like, really? Okay, all right, sure, whatever. We'll throw in these little Easter eggs, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I think the fan nods are fine for the most part. They do a little too much, but when they like Force Awakens, they actually gave those characters character. You know, you like them for the most part. I'll say.
Well,
but in Rogue One, but you'll admit this too, Ryan. In Rogue One, though, can you even name most of the characters in Rogue One?
I wanted them all to die,
and they did.
And they did.
Spoiler, but like
I don't know. Like I want Alan Tudyk and K2SO to be a recurring thing.
They were kind of neat. The robot and the blind, well, not the blind Jedi guy, but his handler. I like those two.
Yeah, let's face it, he is a Jedi though. They're like the only reason why they couldn't call him
complete.
Yeah, the only reason why they couldn't call him a Jedi was because, they were supposedly killed off, but you still need a Jedi figure, apparently. So, but at the same time, though, I did enjoy those two characters, though, too. And
the only problem was they weren't the lead characters, which made it kind of weird.
And that's actually kind of a thing that I have kind of touched upon in other things, though, too, is that it feels like the side characters are always the more interesting, and the reason for that is because you need as a reader, as a viewer, as a however we're consuming our media, we don't really gravitate towards something unless we can kind of put ourselves into it. And so oftentimes, like, main characters are written kind of very basic. Excuse me. For that particular reason. Mm-hmm. Like if you look at I don't know,
Luke Skywalker. There wasn't very much special about him.
Exactly. But as a kid, you wanted to kind of be like him. Even though there, like you said, there wasn't really anything special about it. And honestly, frankly, he kind of whined a lot too in those first two movies.
Yeah, but
they did the opposite with
Jyn Erso.
No, Rey.
Oh, okay.
Because there was no growth. There is no. Until Han Solo dies, there really isn't.
Okay.
Well, and the thing is, though, too, is that we're only one movie in, though, too.
Yeah, you can say the same thing about Luke in the first one. He didn't have much till Ben Kenobi died.
But he wasn't doing Jedi mind tricks an hour after he heard what a Jedi was.
If they talk about them in the second movie, I'll accept that plot hole. But if they don't, I'll agree with you.
Well, I mean, if I remember right, Mark Hamill says in like one of the trailers, he said, I've seen raw power like this before, and I wasn't too afraid to turn away, but now I am terrified, or something like that, while he's training Rey. So I don't remember exactly what the quote is. So I mean, it sounds almost like they're going to address it.
Oh God, I know what he's talking about. She's Jar Jar's granddaughter.
It turns out Gungans are asexual and can reproduce. Jar Jar is both her mother and her father.
He's an Asari.
Misa gonna reproduce you.
Oh man.
But I was gonna say I think the difference between Luke Skywalker, how he's kind of a blank slate in the beginning, and if you can compare him to Jyn Erso in Rogue One has more motivation to get the plot going forwards. The other one, you can tell you can tell more that's a studio saying we have to get to this point, to this point, to this point.
Yep, by the numbers focus group kind of thing like that. So, and again though, I enjoyed Rogue One, but most of what I enjoyed was like in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Definitely.
But that's not to say that there were other parts in there that were still pretty good. But again, though, and the other thing too is that all those reshoots and whatnot that they had to go back and do as well. It's kind of a what is the phrase? A camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what it is. Like, we have focus groups in Hollywood right now that are, well, like, this particular demographic prefers this kind of thing because we cross-sectioned, like 100 people and asked them a series of questions to find out what they would like in this, and probably none of them are even Star Wars fans or anything.
Yeah, that's why we got the names of the planets on screen. That it's not a Star Wars, but that annoyed the hell out of me. It made it look like Chronicles of Riddick, which wasn't a bad movie.
Yeah. Well,
but I think they use the same text as that, and that kind of.
Yeah.
No, the first one was better. What was it called? Blackout?
Pitch Black.
Pitch Black. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that one just started off as Pitch Black. It wasn't like the Chronicles of Riddick. It was literally just Pitch Black. So
it's another one you could argue for continuations, but
yeah, exactly. So, and I didn't. I only watched them like once. Like, I have kind of like this weird love-hate relationship with Vin Diesel. And it's like, here's the thing though, he's a huge nerd.
Oh, absolutely.
He plays Dungeons and Dragons. He taught what's her name on the last Riddick movie. He taught her how to play Dungeons and Dragons during downtime on the set and everything. So I mean, like, he is a big nerd, but at the same time though, like, when you what was it, The Witch Hunter was it was about his character in Dungeons and Dragons, and it ended up being a pretty terrible movie.
You never do vanity projects.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those actors where he's a good person. He just can't pick his roles.
Right.
Which is sad because,
Now, the reason why I have a love-hate relationship with him is, but A, like, he's a D&D player. He's a brother in arms with me. And B, I remember in high school. High school was when the very first when the Lord of the Rings movies started coming out. And that was also when, like, the Harry Potter was picking up steam as well. And I remember this one gal, she was the biggest Harry Potter fan, but she said that I was childish because I was reading Lord of the Rings and excited for Lord of the Rings and not Harry Potter. Yeah, I know.
Harry Potter is like a 7th grade reading level.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, she was also she had the biggest crush on Vin Diesel. And so when it came out that he played Dungeons and Dragons, I did not let her hear the end of it. I reminded her on like a daily basis, hey, your guy Vin Diesel, yeah. Guess what he probably did this weekend? Just probably sat around with a bunch of Mountain Dew and Cheetos and pretended he was a wizard for a while. So, I love it.
Yeah, we're trying to enter that sect of nerddom right now. Actually, we got all the D&D stuff, and we're trying to. Well, I'm trying to translate all the books and stuff.
Right. What edition did you guys get?
I think it's the 5th.
Okay.
I got the beginner's thing and the first guidebook.
So the player's handbook and the starter kit?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good start. 5th edition, like, this will probably get the biggest amounts of angry emails, despite all the political talk and everything that we had. I really enjoy 5th edition. The thing is, though, is that, like, most players kind of have like an infatuation with the whatever edition it is that they started with, for the most part anyway. But I actually played 3rd edition for the very first. I also went back and played 2nd edition as well, and 4th edition I also played as well. But 4th edition was a completely different. That was where like a huge shift occurred with Dungeons and Dragons players, and a lot of people speculate that 4th edition probably could have worked if it wasn't called Dungeons and Dragons, because it kind of separated itself a little bit too much from its roots for the most part. If it was named something else, it probably would have been called the Dungeons and Dragons Killer for the most part. 5th edition I enjoy, and a lot of people give or take it. Most of the time, whenever I hear complaints about 5th edition, it's that it's too streamlined, it's too simple in a way. But when you're a father of two with like a full-time job plus a shop, and you don't
kind of want simplicity sometimes.
You kind of want simple. You don't want to go through an encyclopedia of books to play Pathfinder or anything like that. So it's one of those things that that I enjoy of it. And 5th edition allows for enough flourishes that you can make a character be different from other characters. Mechanically speaking, yeah, a 5th level fighter is not going to be that much different from another 5th level fighter. It's what you do with the template that goes from there. And a lot of people kind of forget that, like in 2nd edition and even in 3rd edition, in order to make a character, you had to adhere to a certain guideline as well. The problem with 3rd edition for me was if I wanted to do something weird and outlandish, I had to consult like 5 different books, 3 different charts in each of those books. Got to get this feat, this feat, this feat, this feat that I'm not even going to use, but it's a prerequisite for the feat that my entire character is based around. And then I don't have a character that I want until like level 15 or 16. So it just got time consuming was the big thing for me. Now I still can go back and do 3rd edition and whatnot, but honestly I think 5th edition is a good starting point for people, and it is a very, because of its streamlinedness, you can also tweak it a little bit too. You can homebrew a particular character that you want to do and clear it with your dungeon master, or as a dungeon master you can make one for your party member that wants to do something different if you want to be a little bit more hands-on. It's a very simple system that you can freely do that in. So, and that's kind of my selling point with it.
Okay.
So,
and like I kind of like the simple part at first, because eventually once we do it a little bit, I'd like to I'm starting to set up my own world kind of thing. Like because the fantasy world, it's interesting, but I think adding some aspects and your own characters could be make it really interesting.
Yep. Oh, I hear you loud and clear. Like in 3rd edition, they usually did that with supplement books.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like in 3rd edition, there were books that allowed you to make a psionist. There were books that allowed you to set up in a world called Eberron, which was like alchemical mechanicals type stuff. So you could then start playing like golems called Warforged, which were arcane infused like metal creatures that had like a natural armor and things like that. There were books that allowed you to go into probably my favorite setting, which was Dark Sun. And Dark Sun is a post-apocalyptic fantasy where magic, the way that it was used, consumes energy from surrounding areas. So there was a huge, massive war with these sorcerer kings that dried up the entire land. So it's a desert planet, basically.
That's kind of the version I've been trying to think of how to create a storyline.
Yeah, you should look up the Dark Sun campaign setting. There's not one for 5th edition, but again, though, 5th edition is streamlined to the point where you can, homebrew one like that.
Yeah.
So and the other thing too is that another book to consider is, if you're a dungeon master, is to get the Dungeon Master's Guide, because in there they also have other things too. The world that I built for my campaign it's a Victorian Gothic horror kind of build. So what I did was I kind of fast forward the timeline a little bit. So black powder is a thing in my world. So you have flintlock muskets and blunderbusts and everything like that. So but it's still kind of a fantasy setting with magic and everything like that. But there are rules for gunpowder in the Dungeon Master's Guide, if that's another avenue that you want to go to. There are rules for there. They also get into things like environments as well, desert environments, Arctic environments, stuff that extreme conditions, because when you're trouncing around in the tundra, you're going to be taking fatigue, you're going to be taking you're susceptible to cold and things like that. And there's an actual system in place as to what happens to your character if they're exposed to the elements for way too long.
Is there any systems for radiation? Because I think both of us are fans of the the Fallout series.
Are you? You're doing a Fallout series? Okay, that makes me very happy.
I just think that would be an interesting like a sandbox to kind of mess around with.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, for a while, I was building a Fallout universe in the fifth edition, fifth edition universe too. However, I think only like 2 or 3 of my of players were actual Fallout fans, and the rest of them were just completely lost in it. So I kind of like set it to the wayside. But I was working on one myself. Like as far as radiation goes, I mean, I would assume that you could probably like put in like a radiation bar or something along those lines.
Sure.
Actually, that is something that you could do. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, it talks about fatigue, it talks about hunger, starvation, and things like that, and it gives you a chart of like if you're like 3 days without food, this is where you're at, this is what negs that you're taking, and things like that. You might be able to just use that as like kind of a basis for radiation poisoning as it progresses. So, that'd be my recommendation. The 3 books that any Dungeon Master needs is the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can basically run pretty much anything out of those 3 books.
Yeah, I was watching some videos on like where to begin and stuff, and like those all seem like good points, but like at first I like when you can never find those videos where it's like where I know what I need, but like how do I actually start the thing?
Yeah. Well, in reality, the way that I got started dungeon mastering was just simply because I just wanted to try it. And I'll tell you right now, my very first campaign was terrible. And it's going to be terrible. And I don't mean this to deter you or anything along those lines, but there is a huge difference between being a player and being a dungeon master, and it just kind of comes with repetition. The more you flex that particular muscle, the better it gets. And I'm nowhere near what I should be for a dungeon master, playing as long as I have. But again, part of that is also because I think the last time we played was like almost 3 months ago, just because it's been so damn busy right now. So
when you run a comic shop,
yeah, exactly. So, but that's another thing to kind of keep in mind as well. And your players will probably be understanding as well. I mean, back in the early days of D&D, most of the people that were dungeon masters were just the ones that happened to have the monster manual. Like they were usually the ones that got to be dungeon master because they actually had the access to the sources or to the source books. But now they're more easily accessible at this point, and especially with being young adults, or even like full-grown adults with disposable income. They're easier to get.
Go on Amazon, look it up.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you buy from Wizards of the Coast, usually they'll like bundle them relatively cheaply too if you buy all 3 of them at once. And even though you already have the Player's Handbook, you're gonna need more Player's Handbooks.
Let's pass them all around.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I had 4th edition. I had a lot of books in 4th edition, actually, and I barely even played it, but it was just because, again, when I was buying them, I also didn't have a whole lot of time, and there weren't really a lot of people that wanted to play it with me either, and I wanted to give it a shot, but I was also like curious about what the system was doing and everything like that. But I remember when my wife and I had a garage sale, I'm like sitting there going, well, 5th edition, I'm so in love with 5th edition, I'm probably just never going to use this 4th edition ever again, so I might as well get rid of it. And I had like 4th edition like overprinted books. There was a Dungeon Master's Guides 1 and 2. There were 3 Player's Handbooks. There were like different printings of these particular books. There were like 3 monster manuals. There was like a book dedicated solely to like equipment that you can find and everything like that. And I had like a bunch of these books. But not only did I have those, I had like copies of the Player's Handbook. So that way, like, feasibly speaking, I had enough paper where a dungeon master can sit down with 4 people and everybody could have their own stuff. And I have like boxes and boxes of dice as well, so I even like set out like, you know, enough dice for like 5 people to sit down and play. And I also threw in like a dungeon master screen, and I also had like a old folder of I think like 10 or 12 4th edition character sheets, and so I included all of this in, and I think I was asking for, I want to say about $80 for all of it.
Oh, that's a good deal.
No, I would have lost money on that, and there were still people that were wanting to haggle me over it. I'm like, you don't understand. These books, when they came out, they were $40-$50 each. So, and I mean, I know it's been a few years, but I basically handed you, you know,
your whole life, or
your whole, yeah, kind of thing, and for the price of like 2 of these books. So
yeah, but I think one of like the things that turns people off to it is like at first when I was looking up D&D videos, kind of guess a reference, they would have like this giant table with the player pieces and the maps and everything, and the master's the cardboard thing. So I saw that, I'm like, holy shit. But then I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, all you need is this book pretty much, and you can do whatever.
Yeah. Book, pencil, paper, or character sheets, and dice. That's really ultimately what you need. The screen is there just to kind of add a little bit more mystery to your players a little bit, because it kind of keeps them a little bit more on edge when they don't know what you're rolling specifically. So so that's what that is for. It also is a good place to keep your notes too. Like my Dungeon Master screen is just littered with notes that my players aren't allowed to see, but it's a reference for me to be able to you know, kind of quickly reference and you know, work off the cuff with that. But I mean, dice are important. You'll want pencils, obviously, which those are relatively cheap, of course. And unless you keep losing them like all my players do, but that's beside the point. And
am I
dice,
gonna have to tie them to you guys? Come on now.
And dice themselves, like they're I think for a good set they're only about $10 or something like that for. Because you do need the variant dice. It's more than just the D20 and whatnot. It's you need the D10, the D12, the D4, everything like that. So
yeah, I was glad most of them came in the beginners thing, because
I
don't want to say I'm broke, but you know,
you ho.
He's just a boy.
So but yeah, that's basically. Oh man, like Dungeons and Dragons is like a topic that I can go on for hours on too. So before this becomes a Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Hey, that's fine. I can just put timestamps in the description.
Right. So, excuse me. Yeah. So, and a lot of those. I don't know who you're watching. A good recommendation would be Pro Jared. He's a good guy to talk about or talk to. Nerdarchy is another great source. The granddaddy of them all, which would be Critical Role.
They're the one with the animations, right?
No, they don't have. Well, they have. Well, fans will submit in animations, but they themselves, they don't animate all of their table. Like they did that like once a week, and they ran for like 3 hours. I dread thinking about how much animation time that would take. So Critical Role is where a bunch of voice actors will sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons. So these are like anime voice actors and video game voice actors. So these are people that get really into their characters and like really throw the voices in and everything like that. You know, Matthew Mercer is a guy that I hope to aspire to be dungeon mastering at some point, like on that level of dungeon mastering skill. Because if you watch his stuff, he is insane. The amount of like stuff that he puts into it and how animated he gets with all of his stuff and everything. There is also a local podcast that local to here in Hayes, America.
Oh, really?
That do Dungeons and Dragons as well. Like two or three of them like come and shop at the shop here as well. And they're called Critical Hit. And they were actually around before Critical Role was. So it's just that Critical Role has like a lot of production value behind it and everything like that. But the guys that do Critical Hit are also really good role players and everything like that. I don't think they do any video role playing. I think they're strictly podcast, which is kind of nice because you can just put them on in
background noise.
While you're working and just kind of keep going on that. And you know, they're really well done as well too. One of the players there was actually from my original Dungeons and Dragons group in early college too, so I'd been playing with them for a long while. And they're good people as well too. So, you know, there you go, Rob. I plugged your podcast. So,
our two viewers will be grateful.
Yeah, right. But yeah, they're well worth checking out as well too, and they have a huge backlog, and they don't just play Dungeons and Dragons either. Like they'll go through like periods where they're like, okay, now let's do a Cthulhu game, and let's do a Western game, let's do this and that and everything. So you know they kind of change it up a little bit too and try different things, and then you know they'll do it like for 5 episodes or so, and then they'll kind of talk about it and review how they felt the system worked and things like that too. So you know, that's another thing to kind of look into. I mean, D&D is like the most well-known, but it's not necessarily the most accessible either. There's White Wolf, there's Deadlands, there's
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder is a response to 4th edition. Pathfinder is technically speaking Dungeons and Dragons 3.75.
Oh.
They built it onto the Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 template and then expanded upon it, kind of thing. But yeah, Pathfinder is its own thing, and there are a lot of books with that too. But you know, when you're playing that, you're effectively playing D&D with that one. But a lot of people prefer that system though too. I can definitely see the appeal of it because it is very crunchy. There is a lot to that system. If you want a real headache, GURPS or Rifts, those are. I do not recommend those two systems because they are hair pulling, frustrating, or levels of frustrating. But you can basically do anything you can fathom in that. The Fallout universe actually originally used the GURPS system, GURPS. It stands for like General Universal Role Playing System or something like that.
For like their skill sets, or
yeah.
Okay.
So like, well, the original Fallout series, the Fallout game that came out in 1992, that was, you know, isometric, top-down, turn-based combat role-playing game.
We were just playing that a couple hours ago.
Yeah, the system that they use is they were originally using the GURPS system for that, and then they basically like tweaked it a little bit and made it their own, and that's where the special system came about. So, you know, so GURPS has its purpose. It's just that you almost have to be like an accounting person in order to fully appreciate it. But there's also a Star Wars system as well too.
Yeah.
Actually, there's like 3 of them if I remember right.
That was actually what kind of got me into looking into D&D. There's some.
Yep.
It was pretty much D&D, but it had a Star Wars twist on it. That's it.
Yeah. But like Star Wars has its own like official system that they've been putting out. There's one for Serenity, the Firefly universe. There's a system for that as well. There's I mentioned White Wolf before. That's the World of Darkness system. That's where like vampire and werewolf and mage and all of those systems came from. If you've ever seen the Underworld movies, that's basically them. That's basically them ripping off White Wolf. So, like White Wolf even like went to court with them over it because it was way too similar to what they had put out. and everything. So, yeah. And the White Wolf system, however, is a very accessible system because that was kind of where I really started to get into role playing. Because like at the time that I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, it was 3.5, which was still a lot of chart reading and things like that. Whereas in the White Wolf system, the system is just a little bit more accessible. Like you just count the dots that you have and you roll that kind of dice. You only need one type of dice in that, and it's a strictly D10 system, but you just need a pool of them. So you need a bunch of them, and then you just count how many successes you have based on the particular roll. And there were times where we would be playing in this system, and we realized that it was like, you know, an hour or two before any of us have even rolled, because it's more just role play based kind of thing. So if you're wanting a little bit more like acting based system, that'd be the system to go with. Actually, LARP, all of the live action role players, most of those are done off of a White Wolf system, because it translates into live action role playing a lot easier than Dungeons and Dragons does. So,
Okay.
yep. So there's that encyclopedia again, encyclopedic knowledge, and yeah. So, and it's just been you and me. I think we lost the other guy, so it's
Yeah, he's still here. He's
I've been
taking
lost in
notes.
Wikipedia.
he's researching all this. Are you my guy in the chair? Is that what that is?
Yeah, he's the tech guy.
I did love that in Homecoming. I loved that.
Oh.
Yeah. Can I be? I'm the guy in the chair. Yeah, I love that.
Like that scene in the high school where they're like, "What are you doing?" "I'm watching porn."
Watching porn. Yeah, it was so great. I loved Homecoming. That made me happy. That made me very happy. And I'm glad that they didn't go back and retread Uncle Ben getting shot again. Like,
You don't want him to have more bullet holes?
yeah, it's like we're just dropping it in. You know who Spider-Man is. This is what happens when he came back after Avengers. Let's just go or after Captain America: Civil War. Let's just go from there. So
Yeah, I liked how they did that little montage thing at the beginning to kind of catch you up to where everything is.
yeah, that was really cool too. I thought that was a fantastic movie. You know, Spider-Man 1 and 2 with Tobey Maguire still has a near and dear place in my heart, but you know, Homecoming I would put, you know, with those two in my opinion.
Yeah.
But you know,
The
but that's
original
just
are even better though when you know like the director, what the stuff he did previous.
for Homecoming or for
No,
for
Sam Raimi.
Yeah, Sam Raimi.
Yeah, it's Sam Raimi. Yeah, and the reason why Bruce Campbell pops up in all three of those movies too is because, you know, he's Sam Raimi's buddy.
And the Oldsmobile too.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and oh yeah, like man, now I need to go home and watch Army of Darkness. So, it's this is my boomstick.
Thanks for signing my Evil Dead 2 posters, Bruce. I love you.
That's awesome. Oh, get this. Tying Bruce Campbell into role-playing games.
Yes.
There's a game called Deadlands. I'm trying to remember. I think it's part of the Savage Lands system, but I wouldn't quote me on that.
Has he been talking about it on his Twitter?
What?
Has he been talking about it on his Twitter?
I don't think so. He might have. I don't know. I don't follow him on. I don't do the tweets. I'm not with the young crowd. I don't do the tweets. I made a Twitter account for my stand-up comedy that I posted, like, my very first tweet was like, "Oh, we're gonna try this whole tweeting thing," and then like my first 2 followers were like 2 of my ex-girlfriends, and.
Twitter's only a good format when you already have people.
The following, yeah, exactly. So, and then gosh, it was very messy. And then oh god, what was it? But anyway, so Deadlands is a system where it takes place in the Old West, with like the Texas Rangers and everything like that, and the story behind it is that the Civil War is still going on. It hasn't stopped at all, and California has been found. And out there, instead of gold, they found like this special rare mineral that's used in like arcana occult type stuff. So there's like this whole like voodoo magic system that's tied into it as well. And instead of dice, mostly it uses a deck of playing cards as the dicing combat system kind of thing. It's very unique and very cool at the same time. But in the player's handbook, the foreword was written by Bruce Campbell, and like I remember reading that foreword, and at the tail end of it, he said, "So go ahead, learn the system. Give me a call. Let me know. I'll come by and play with you sometime," and everything like that. And I'm like, "It's written down. It's legally binding. We gotta learn this system." Which that isn't how it works, but it was a nice little like pipe dream of mine, but but that's my little like tie-in with that. So, did you guys make it out to any? Do you guys make it out to any conventions? I know one of you said that you're from Hutch, where the Smallville Comic-Con is, but that definitely wasn't a thing when you were growing up. So
no, in fact, when they started doing that, I'd already been moved away from there for about 5 or 6 years by then. So I want to go, just never have the opportunity.
Yeah, so this is actually kind of a way to tie it back around to comic book shop owning and everything like that. I've kind of talked about this with like customers and everything along those lines, but a lot of shops have a convention presence. And that's usually where a good chunk of their sales actually comes from, is from comic book conventions. Now the key word is like it's comic book conventions, not media conventions, per se. Now I'm not gonna like badmouth Kansas City Comic-Con, because they actually gave us for our Halloween Comic Fest, they gave us 2 free tickets to give to a grand prize winner for a costume contest that we had, and I cannot be eternally grateful for that. So if anyone of that is listening, props to you guys. Thank you very much for giving us that. But the problem that me as a vendor has with like Planet Comic-Con and Denver Comic-Con and Kansas City Comic-Con is that they almost become too big of a media event for a vendor to work in. We were at the Salina Comic-Con this past year, and I was talking to some of the other vendors. This was before we opened our doors. We were just there promoting the fact that we were opening our doors soon. And so, but I was talking with some of these other vendors about it, and they actually lose money at Planet Comic-Con, at some of these big media events. And the reason for that is because have you guys ever been to a comic book convention at all, or
this summer was my first one.
Okay. Was it Planet, or was it Salina or Smallville or anything like that?
It was the Denver one.
The Denver Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you had a media panel then and everything.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Okay.
There's a couple of those.
All right. So let me ask you something. As a convention goer, you probably had to pay for your passes.
Yeah.
You had to pay for hotel, getting there, driving, everything along those lines.
Yep.
Were the panels included, or do you also have to pay to go to the panels?
Actually, the panels were free. It was just
panels were free. Okay.
But they had like merchandise like stacked up so high.
Yeah.
Like, they know that's where they're gonna get you.
Exactly. The merchandising and the signing are usually what costs money.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was excited when Planet Comic-Con got Stan Lee in there, And I was like, gonna go see Stan Lee. But, after, what was it, $90 for the pass to, get there all three days, because I wanted to see everything. I didn't, because when you're standing in line to meet Stan Lee, you you're gonna be there pretty much all day unless you manage to get there insanely early. And even then, the doors won't open up until a certain point and everything like that. So after that, and then like the panel itself, like in order to have him sign something, you had to pay money. In order to get a picture taken with him, you had to pay money. Some of the panels, like there was like a Jay and Silent Bob panel there that I think wasn't free or anything like that.
That's pretty messed up. Like.
Yeah, or maybe it was, but they also had like a push for their merch as well too. I don't really remember because this has been a bit there. But when you factor all of that in, I'm not gonna have that much money to go over to the vendor square and spend any of it. And so.
Oh, sorry.
And the other thing too is that vendors have to pay for those tables too. So if you're bringing in a lot of wares, you're probably they charge you by the table. So there's a charge for like a single 10-foot table. Then you have to buy another table if you want to like go 20 feet down if you've got a lot of inventory. And then there's even more money that you have to spend if you want a corner booth. Where you're going to get like a lot of traffic and a little bit more display area for your wares. When you factor that in, plus hauling all the stuff and everything like that, like a lot of them ended up losing like a lot of money to go out there, So for a vendor, it's more profitable for us to go to Salina Comic-Con, Smallville Comic-Con, the Big Apple one that's in Manhattan, or sorry, not Big Apple, Little Apple Comic-Con that's in Manhattan, or some of like the smaller cons that are in Wichita and everything, because those table costs, I think to go to Planet Comic-Con, I want to say it was like $200 to $500 for a table or something like that. I wouldn't quote me on that number, but it was up there a little bit. Versus like Salina Comic-Con was like $70 for a 10-foot table, and you would make that back in like the first hour or so because there aren't a lot of panels for people to go to. When they go to these particular conventions, they're there to buy wares and everything, and the ticket prices were only like I think $5 or $10 or something like that to get into the convention.
Yeah, that was one of the things I noticed at the Denver one. Like there was comic vendors there, but you could tell that's not where they were making their money. It was like the like like old toys or signings or whatever.
Exactly. So and there are people that like go to these big conventions just to seek out like the rare collectible stuff, but they're kind of few and far between.
And most of them are ripoffs.
Yeah. But when you go to like these smaller conventions, that's mostly what people are coming to do. They're coming to talk to artists. They're coming to, when I was when we were at the Salina Comic-Con, I had a buddy of mine with me, who writes and draws his own comic book. Marshall Starr, look it up. And he came with me, and he went to Planet Comic-Con, and he said that he basically lost like $300 going to Planet Comic-Con, just going there, and he only did like 3 or 4 sales while he was there, whereas like in the first 2 hours he had doubled his sales compared to what he did at Planet Comic-Con at the Salina Comic-Con. So, and that's just because that's what people are, they're more inclined to be there and talk to the individual artists of like startups and things like that. So that's another thing to kind of factor in, and bringing it back around to comic shop owners and everything. It's that, it's not worth it for me to go to Denver to Kansas City or anything along those lines, and it makes me sad, but that's ultimately what it is. I mean, the other thing too is that the conventions with a lot of media guests, they bring in a lot of people who don't necessarily collect anything. They just really like Arrow on CW or something along those lines, and they just want to go out and meet the actors to, you know, say that they met the actors of this particular thing that they enjoy.
Yeah, there's at the Denver signing, there's like a few actors that, like some from like Sons of Anarchy and some older 80s movies that just had nothing to do with the Comic-Con. You could tell because like their lines were, there's like two people.
Yeah, and see, that's what I always that's what I look out for. At the Salina Comic-Con, Cullen Bunn was there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cullen Bunn at all, but he is the guy that wrote the original Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe.
Oh,
and then
really?
and then he also wrote the recent one as well, the Kills the Universe Again.
I would like to meet him.
Yeah, he also wrote the Venomverse that just came and went. He did a bit of writing on Moon Knight. He has like some original stories like Harrow County, which is fantastic. If you are a horror guy, you need to read Harrow County. It is wonderful.
Harrow County?
Harrow County. And it is fantastic. And I was there I was like on Sunday, because it was a 2-day convention, you know, and you know, Saturday everybody is like scrambling to get set up and get all of their stuff out and everything like that. But on Sunday, you know, you just leave the stuff there overnight, and you know, there's security that patrols it and everything, and you don't have to worry about it. And that way you can come in on Sunday and just, you know, take the cover off of your table and you're fine. But so Sunday I'm like standing there drinking a coffee, and I'm just chatting with Cullen Bunn like it's like it's nothing. And like inside my brain is just going, what life choices did I make to bring here, and how can I repeat them? Or to bring myself here, like, you know, I'm cool and collected on the outside, but inside I'm like, oh my god, I'm talking to Cullen Bunn, you know. So but that's who I kind of gravitate towards, is, you know, I mean, actors are all fine and dandy, but you know, there was somebody that wrote that script, you know, that wrote those words for. I find myself just gravitating more towards the artists and the writers more than anything else, just because, like, one, I was trying to be one myself for a while, and two, like, you know, they're kind of the ones that that we really have to thank for what we were given for this particular medium that we have.
Yeah,
so
they make everything run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, like, you know, and it is really cool to meet actors and everything too. But you know, I don't know. I just kind of found myself drawn towards them. That, and again, though, nobody really knows. Well, not nobody, but you know, the lines aren't particularly long at that particular for that particular booth, so you can stand there. Yeah. Well, you know, it's one of those things where you know, when you're having to wait in line to meet you know, Billy Piper for 6 hours, you know, you can't really do anything else, kind of thing. You know, which honestly, I probably would stand in line for 6 hours to meet Billy Piper. I'm not gonna lie, but that's
I was gonna, but she canceled her appearance.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that some of these big media guests will cancel their appearances. But I didn't get to go, but I wanted to go to meet Jim Butcher at the Planet Comic-Con. That would have been wonderful.
What does he do?
He does the Dresden Files.
The what?
Oh, son. Okay. All right. You'll want to go and look up a book called Stormfront. By it's part of the Dresden Files. It's by Jim Butcher. It is a first person. It's written in the first person, and it's kind of a, you know, PI noir kind of style book, but it's about a guy who's actually a wizard. And it takes place in Chicago. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know, he takes on like these weird cases that cannot be explained by you know, normal circumstances, kind of thing. And you know, so he's a wizard for hire, or is basically what he is. So, and it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, magic and fairies and werewolves actually do exist. Our human minds just kind of, you know, try to logic our way out of it, kind of thing. So it's a wonderful series that just, you know, I'm trying to remember how many books there are in it. I want to say like 7 or 8, or there might even be more than that if, at this point. I don't quite remember.
13.
But 13. Okay, wow. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, so. I'll try to find the first one. If it picks my attention, I'll try to get through it.
Highly recommend it. There aren't a whole, like, for me, like with novel books, I don't really reread things a whole lot. But Jim Butcher, like, I haven't finished the series yet, but I do plan on, when I do finish the series, to go back and reread it again, because it's just that gripping. It is wonderful. So, oh God, how long have we been talking? Oh, good Lord, 2.5 hours. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And if we didn't lose anybody in the political talk, thank you for sticking around for all this.
We've had at most 2 people watching. So, and one of them was me.
They're loyal fans.
Fair enough. So, but yeah. So, yeah, I don't really. I'm out of water at this point, so I'm getting a little hoarse.
Getting a little. We can wrap it up soon if you want.
Yep. Did you guys have like we kind of went on a huge tangent there, for a while, or I did anyway. But was there anything else that you guys wanted to ask or anything? Like, I don't know if you guys had any like set aside questions, and I'll try to keep my responses brief.
You, Ryan? Oh, well, firstly, I'd like to say thanks for taking up the mantle where Hastings left off.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's another thing that I could talk about. Let me tell you something about Hastings. I actually used to work at Hastings. I wasn't the comic book guy though. I think I worked in the video department. Is where I worked, and everything too. And ultimately, I think the problem with Hastings was that it tried to be too big. You know, I mean, you know, it's good.
What it wanted.
Exactly. And the other thing too is that they were oversaturated with the stuff that was popular per se. Like, whenever I go to a comic shop or a bookstore or things like that, I like looking for the weird stuff. I like looking for the stuff that, you know, that I haven't discovered yet, kind of thing. I don't need an entire 2 end caps of The Walking Dead and Attack on Titan and everything.
I think I did get their logic though, because like it kind of got me as like a normie kind of person. Like, I like these what I thought was weird things, and it kind of pulls you in, and then you kind of get deeper and deeper into the.
Right, which is understandable, but I remember when Hastings was like, it was on like its last 2 weeks or something like that, and they still had just a ton of this merchandise.
Most of it was junk though.
Yeah, it was, but all of it was like Doctor Who, Walking Dead, and Attack on Titans. All three of them are really great franchises, but they overbought.
Yeah,
is what it was.
Like, you want to be sad? Go look at all the Star Wars merchandise just rotting on the shelves.
Yeah,
everywhere. Walmart, Toys R Us. Oh my, it's sad.
I bet even our Dollar General has a bunch of crap.
They do.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like, we're almost kind of overbuying with things, and it runs into with my shop. You know, when I was like, oh, you know. The Defenders are going to be big, so let's get a lot of Defenders in here, so that way people coming in wanting to learn more about the Defenders will come in and buy. And there was like maybe 1 or 2 people that came in and bought, you know, my 20 issues that I had or something like that. But the other thing too is that the way that Hastings did their comic books, from what I understand, is that they would order as a company from Diamond, and then the company would receive the comic books, and then they would distribute those comics basically evenly to the stores, depending on the market and everything like that. So say for the sake of argument, there's like 10 people in this particular area that want to read Captain America. Oftentimes Hastings would only get 8 issues in, or something like that. So then there's like 2 people, like, and if like all 10 of those people have like pull lists or something, or subscription lists with those, well, then those first 8 get pulled, the other 2 get kind of left to the wayside. From what I understood, though, if there were 10 people on the pull list, they would at least get like 10 issues in. But there were a lot of times where like we didn't have things for people because the main branch of Hastings just wouldn't send us everything that we needed.
It seemed like they only had it like back issue sometimes.
Yeah, and part of that is because like part of that is like surplus that they bought from when from smaller comic book shops from when the speculator bubble burst in the 90s. So if you page through like all of their back issue stuff, a lot of it was 90s Valiant comics and things like that, and they were usually like tagged with a generic sticker that had them at like 75 cents or something, and that was before the going out of business sale went, and everything too. I think they were down to like 10 cents an issue or something.
Oh
like
god, you should have seen you should have seen some of the weird stuff I got remember when they were about to close, they had those giant packs of comics like taped up.
Yes.
That was
a stupid idea.
I bought one of those though, and it was just like, it was a bunch of crap pretty much.
Yep.
Like these like what do you call them, indie comics? But the ones where you can tell like this should have never sold.
Right. Yeah. Oh gosh. Now some of those are okay.
There was a few good ones, I'll say that.
Yeah. But I bought a couple of those packs too, just to kind of see what they were doing. I remember one pack I got had like 3 copies of the same damn issue.
Same.
So it's like what is the point of this? And then like a local place called Cheapo Depot is the place that bought the rest of their comic book stock.
Is that in Hayes?
That is in Hayes, yes. It's actually just down the street from where we're located at.
Ooh, competition.
And not really. Yeah. But anyway, what they did was they bought those comic books and then they just kept them in the packs.
Oh.
And they're just selling them off the shelves like that. And when I was first opening the shop, I heard that they had those. So I went to see if I could buy those off of them. And oh god, they wanted like, $4 or $5 grand for it or something along those lines. They wanted to make a profit off of it too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not gonna happen. I'm sorry, but that is not gonna happen. They also had like they had like a back room that had that they had also bought out another comic shop down in Wichita or something like that went out of business in the 90s. So again, it was a lot of Valiant. It was a lot of stuff that just wasn't selling. And I remember the person that was in charge of it was like, yeah, I went through here. There's like 5 issues that are worth about $14. So the way I figure it is that you could buy all 5 of these boxes for. And none of them were in bags and boards, by the way. They weren't kept or anything like that. So you could probably buy all of these for $3 grand. I'm like, no.
$3 grand?
$3 grand for like 5 boxes or something like that. How about you pull out the 14 issues that are actually worth something, and I'll buy those. But they wanted to sell them all in lots, kind of thing. So never did.
Yeah.
And then like just this last month or so, I saw that they had an ad that they were looking to sell those same 5 boxes for $2 grand or something like that. It's like, you're not gonna do it.
I wonder if they're the same people that bought all the Hastings exclusives.
Probably. Well, there were some people that were going through there and buying the Hastings exclusives, particularly. I know there were like I actually ran into a comic shop keeper from Topeka in that Hastings. Like there were some shop owners that were going across Kansas to all of the Hastings to kind of buy up the stuff that they knew that were going to actually sell and whatnot.
Yeah.
And a lot of those were the Hastings exclusives.
I got a few of those. I got like the remember the Deadpool Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I got the first one of that and some of the Doctor Who ones I thought looked neat.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was basically the problem with Hastings, is that like around here the Hastings was doing fine. It was in the black. But, you know, the company as a whole just got too damn bloated, it tried to reach for too much.
Yeah, I never understood at first why it fell apart, because like you said, the one here was always packed full of people.
And I think the one in Hutch is trying to strike out on its own thing.
Oh, it's still open?
It's not still open, but they bought most of their own stock and are trying to stay in entertainment.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And like the thing is though too is that the Hastings here, like the majority of it was mostly its rentals. Like the rental catalog was big with the Hastings here. Because now the only other option that we have is Redbox, and Redbox doesn't have a backlog at all. And there have been many times where I've like told my wife, where my wife and I have been talking, and I've been like, "Wait, you haven't seen this? Oh, we need to go. Oh, never mind, we can't go to Hastings and rent it." So it's like, well, I guess we got to go to Amazon and buy it or something like that. So
I think the renting thing's dying because like we live in a small town where it's like nobody's really technology advanced yet, really, and we still have one of those renting like things for movies, but it's not like Redbox. It's like just a generic company.
They're DVDs, not even Blu-rays.
Yeah, they're expensive DVDs, and even that here is they're getting rid of it the beginning of the year.
Yeah, well, part of that also too is that like all of these big. Is it like a Family Video or something like that? Or
it's this big company, but I think it's an older one.
It's just like it's a little franchise.
Gotcha.
Well, it's kind of like a vendor franchise that works out
Right.
of the grocery store. So.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, and part of that is that like that was another thing that I thought about doing before the comic book shop was maybe opening a video rental store or something like that. But
the only way you can make that work is if you were doing like Laserdisc or something like that.
But,
sounds crazy, but trust me, that would work.
Yeah. But one of the things that, the overhead to get that started was a lot more than it was for comic books.
Mm-hmm.
But also, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, with video stores, like they have to order it. Like you remember with Hastings, whenever a new release would come out, they would have an entire wall full of the big blockbuster title because people are going to be coming in to rent it.
I think Walmart even still does that.
Yeah, exactly. And then once those rentals like start dying down, well then they take the discs out and they buff them and then they put them in the normal case and then they sell their old rentals. Which honestly, I always bought the old rentals because it was a lot cheaper than buying the video new. But a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's an old rental. I don't want that." It's like, here's the thing though, the warranty on those go a lot longer than the brand new ones. So if it doesn't skip when you first get it home, unless you do something drastic to it, it's probably not going to skip again. Kind of thing. I mean, like you can always return it and try a different one or something along those lines. It doesn't, I used to work for DirecTV, and I would always recommend that people get the refurbished satellite receivers over the brand new ones, because the brand new ones were just mass produced on a conveyor belt, and whatever might be wrong with them slips past quality control. Whereas with a refurbished one, something was wrong with it, yes, but it's refurbished, which means that a tech person took it apart and painstakingly fixed it, and then put it back together, with a lot more quality control over that. And though the refurbished ones end up lasting a lot longer than the brand new ones, so. But because we need to have the shiny brand new one, we need to have the issue 1, we need to have it's got to be, you know, if I'm going to spend my money on this, I want it to be top dollar. But you know, in reality, it's all mass produced the exact same way.
Although for like movies and stuff like we're talking about, you almost have to do that because, you know, everything's going digital. Only the collectors are buying the physical media anymore.
Right, and it's very true too. So I don't know, like there's just something about having the physical copy that I like. If I pay money, I don't want to pay money for, you know, a bunch of ones and zeros.
Yeah, you can actually hold it in your hand.
Exactly. I can physically like go, okay, I have a thing that I have exchanged goods and services for. So
let me tell you about vinyl records.
I actually have vinyl records too. That was another option that I thought about doing, was I wanted to do a vinyl record shop, but I felt comics were a little bit more accessible than vinyl records. That's an even more niche market than usual.
It's on its way up though.
In Kansas, probably it's a niche one.
Absolutely. But yeah. Okay, it is midnight where I am right now. Well, obviously where you guys are right now. Yeah. I'm almost certain my wife has gone to bed, and I need to probably do the same. So, thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. Glad to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully I didn't ramble too much. But
no. Oh, if you want to say like where your store is, you can do that.
Well, in all honesty, the store is actually closing, so we're going back to that. My wife and I are actually expecting our third kid, and the landlords have been talking about selling the location as well. And I mean, we were doing fine where we're at, but I don't think we can take, you know, a double in rent for a larger location at this particular point. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down to the con circuit for a bit, just to kind of build up that repertoire as well. And we might try again a little bit later on down the line when, you know, like the rent in Hayes actually goes down, because it's a bit ridiculous. Downtown Hayes, to rent in those buildings is almost like $2,000 a month or so. Ooh. It's ridiculous, and then you can't even do anything in it because all of those are historical buildings as well. So you can't change anything in those particular buildings either. And you know, also like there's a shop, or there's a business in downtown Hayes whose sole purpose is to get people to shop at other downtown businesses. So, like, it's one of those things where it's like I don't really feel like this particular thing works as a local thing. So we're probably going to go online. So as of right now, So as of right now, we're in limbo at this point. But if you want to look it up, it's Red Wagon Comics on Facebook, and we'll probably keep posted on what we're eventually going to do. The other thing too is that, like I said, you know, I haven't even paid myself in this business yet, and I mean our hours of operation are kind of part-time. The amount of time that I've been putting in this after hours is insane, and I kind of miss my kids. Even though they drive me crazy from time to time, I miss my kids. So I'd kind of like to spend a little bit more time with them. So, you know, this is a decision that it's not necessarily out of finances per se, because we probably could keep going, but you know, I just don't have the drive to put my wife and kids through that, and to kind of add the extra stress level onto myself right now.
Yeah. So, well, whatever you decide to do, good luck with it.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, and you know, thank you to everybody that supported the shop and everything too. So, I mean, like I said, it's, you know, it wasn't really a finance thing or anything like that. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, this probably wasn't the right time for this kind of thing. So it was one of those things where I was trying to strike while the iron was hot with Hastings closing kind of thing too. But, you know, we can still find life elsewhere. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I gotta get going. So, you guys have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.